Just when I thought I couldn't find my way out, yeah, I searched the God in me to find my way out. I know it can seem way out, but the Creator flows to and through me from way out. I'm talking way out, yeah, yeah, yeah. See, if you believe in the God in you, it's a better place. Creating the force and the power to live a better life. Just know that love and joy and peace is one and all of the same space. That you were chosen just like God. Your energy. That's right. Only you can make the change. Shine your head at you. Shine so bright. From darkness to light. Hey, hey, hey. From darkness to light. Yeah. And you'll find your way out. Yeah. Oh, it won't seem way out. Yeah. The power of God will flow through you from way out.
Welcome. This is Alchemizing Energy, and we are so happy once again to have Chief Ayele Kumari here once again to talk about the Iyami. Before we get into it, let's talk about Chief's bio. Chief Dr. Ayele Kumari has over 30 years of experience in healing and indigenous knowledge systems. She is a fully initiated and trained Iyalawo and initiated Olorisha priest in the mysteries of Ifa. Olokun, Obatala, Oshun, Oya, Yemoja, Osain, Gelede, and Egungun. Her lineage is in Ota and Ibadan, Nigeria. She is also a historian in African women's history and spiritual traditions. She is the Oba Albinrin, Olokun, Omilere, United States, Iya Abiye in Obani, Otun Yeye, Amun Fawuni, and Iyamode Egungun. She has a formal education in sociology, theology, and naturopathy, and was college director and professor in natural and allied health for 16 years. She is currently the head of Ashe Soul Global Village and director of the Ori Institute. As an author of 4 books, she offers lectures and presentations around the globe. Her work is known for healing, wisdom, and practical knowledge to improve the quality of lives she touches. She is a professional diviner, traditional healer, and priest, and grandmother of her 9. Her website is ayelekumari.com and ashesoul.com, amongst others. And without further ado, I would like to welcome to Alchemizing Energy, Dr. Chief Dr. Ayele Kumari. Welcome to Alchemizing Energy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I hope that was a good introduction, right?
That was fine. That was perfectly fine. Yeah.
Yes. So we did a show that we talked about Odu Meji. That was the first Odu that came out for the United States. But prior to that, there is the Osa Meji that came out, and that is dealing with the Iyami. Can you break down Osa Meji and its connection to Iyami? And for those that don't know what Iyami is, that might be watching this for the first time, never heard of Ifa, never heard of that, could you kind of break that whole thing down? That's a lot. That was a crazy question.
That was a lot. So in the West African Orisha tradition, and the wisdom tradition, we understand knowledge by breaking it down into 16 core elements. And within those 16 core elements are 16 other core elements. It produces what we call Odu. And Odu are each categories of wisdom and how we understand the universe and so on. As a part of that, one of those Odus is called Osa Meji. And Osa Meji specifically talks about the divine feminine, the sacred mothers, the mothers of creation, the mothers who govern the earth, and the mothers who govern our existence, as well as our ancestral mothers. So there's different layers of motherhood, womanhood, feminine energy, and so on that is covered within Osa Meji. But each category, each Odu, is its own expansive set of encyclopedias, if you will, of information and knowledge. It is broken down by ecology, life events, situational nature, all of the things, the elements, anything that is in existence that we call Aye, and anything even connecting to that which we cannot see, the invisible realm, which we call Orun, are all tied into those Odus. And so that's a very quick and probably insufficient summary, but that, because we have so much to talk about, that's the summary I'll give.
Okay, so what role do the Iyami play in that Odu of Osa Meji?
So there's different levels of motherhood. And so Iyami can show up both as your own individual mother and your mother's line, the feminine line, all the way back to the first mothers. So in that way, they're the ancestral mothers. It can also show up as Mother Earth, Onile, who is the mother of this planet. Nothing happens. We all live here. We all depend on it. So Iyami can also refer to Ile in that regard. And all of the elements that go inside of this earth plane in and of itself. Iyami can also speak about the cosmic mothers, and the cosmic mothers' role in creation is that they were here first. Now we understand it in terms of these are the mothers who guide and balance the entire, not just the earth, but the universe. They were a part of creation in and of itself. Part of their job is to maintain the sacred balance so that the world continues on. It also is justice, balance, and so on. Spiritually, their ultimate job is to raise us. And what I mean by raise us is, what does a mother do? They raise children. They nurture us, they raise us, they discipline us, they check us, they teach us, they guide us. They do all of these things. Many people, it's just like the role of your typical mother in that regard, only it expands beyond the universe. So if there's an issue planetary, if there's an issue with a group of people, if there's an issue with individuals and so on and so forth, and particularly if that issue is throwing off the balance of the community, of the earth, of nature, or so on and so forth, it's going to bring in these mothers. Those cosmic mothers in that regard. So their job is layered. It's not one-dimensional, two-dimensional. It's going to show up in a number of different ways.
So I wanted to play something right quick that it deals with Osa Meji. It actually, Umar Johnson was actually doing an interview, and he was discussing what was going on currently when it comes down to the feminine spirit, the female spirits, and Osa Meji. Let's play it a little bit.
An energy pattern that oversees or rules or influences that calendar year. You with me? The energy pattern for 2026, June 6th, 2026 to June 5th, 2026 is known as Osa Meji. Stay with me on this. Osa Meji. Osa Meji, to make it simple, because this is a very big thing, complex, but I'm going to make it real simple. Right. Osa Meji is the energy pattern of the great invisible mothers. This is feminine energy, Loon. It is not evil, but it is in the dark. It is the energy of women, spirits, female spirits, not human beings. These are feminine spirits that God created before he even made this planet. You see, their job is to oversee the balance of the universe, right and wrong. They are the overseers and the protectors of Black women, feminine energy. And for men who don't treat women well, they can destroy your life. Why am I bringing this up, Loon? For you, for me, for him, for every Black man in the world. This is not the year to be playing around with women. You hear what I'm telling you? Mm-hmm. You playing with this one, but she want more? Make her your queen, let her go. Yeah. If you're a polygamist, let her know, let her decide. This is not the year to play with the hearts, minds, and emotions of women, because this is the year of the primordial mothers. These spiritual energies will whip your ass. I'm telling you right now, if any of your homies hit you up and say, Loon, I was just in a bad car accident. Loon, I just got diagnosed with this. Loon, I just lost this, right? Loon, my wife just left me. The first thing you should ask, how have you been treating women this year? Every
Interesting. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts?
For the most part, he's there, but I think that it's important to understand Iyami are not petty. By the time they have addressed an issue with you, they have tried in many different ways to get you to act right. By the time it comes to that you are being specifically addressed in a way that checks you, it is not just this year. It is the accumulated things in years before. It is an accumulated thing that has happened that can cause that. But I also want to make sure that people also understand that there's another aspect. The justice is absolutely, it's there. The addressing wrongs and right, it's also there. But one of the biggest things that people don't know about Iyami is the massive healing presence of the great mothers, the massive healing energy of Iyami. Iyami is connected to healing. And it's bigger than just punishment, right? It is also supporting the healing, the elevation, the continuation of the earth. The justice that they're interested in is justice, especially as it relates to when balance has been offset, when things have been off, and it has created an imbalance in the world, and so on and so forth. So you have to look at this. You have to kind of consider when you're dealing with Iyami, we're not talking about small petty things, right? As he did say, and it is true, they were here before creation. And because of that, right? Think about that, right? Think about how many billions of years they've been in existence. There's nothing that they haven't seen in that regard, nothing. So they're very mystical in that regard, but they're not petty, right? They're addressing imbalance. As it relates to men, I will say Iyami is just as strict with women as it is with men. It's a misnomer that they only deal with men, because especially if you're one of their daughters, they will check you quicker than they will check the man. But I will say that when it comes to men, it's really about dominating masculine energy, oppressive masculine energy, and so on. And when that happens, you have to recognize that it throws the society off, it throws the family off, it can throw the children off. All of those things can influence that. And if the children are thrown off and the family is thrown off, then the communities is thrown off, and then the country and the greater society is thrown off, and then the earth is thrown off, right? So it is a residual effect, and it compounds with multiple people doing it and aggravating it, and so on and so forth. So rape, sexual assault, molestation, those kinds of things, on a small scale, absolutely they should be dealt with. But once they've also become a massive scale as well, now you're shifting the balance of the earth. Now you're shifting how the earth operates, and that's a problem.
You know, it's interesting. My mom used to say stuff like, "I brought you in this world, I'll take you out." And that's a very Iyami type of saying. I don't know if my mom was Iyami, but honey, my mom was a fierce woman. May she rest in peace. Modu, pray for her. But yes, Modu Peo. But like, yeah, she would be like, listen, you know, she was not playing. And so, what do you think? Why is it that the feminine spiritual power is often associated with the ability to both nurture and also destroy?
It's the nature of feminine energy. The nature of feminine energy is built on, let's look at the nature of the womb itself, right? The womb itself, it can create. Creation happens there, right? Any child that comes through, they have to come through the womb, right? That is the portal to a room. That's automatically there. It is a sustainer. It can sustain the child and sustain the baby and develop the baby, and so on and so forth. But if that child, or if that egg is not fertilized, right, then what happens? That egg, or the egg goes into the womb, and then it breaks down, and it creates what? the menstrual cycle, right? The menstrual cycle is a breakdown of the lining of the womb, and it is moving it out. So within the womb itself, it contains all of the elements of creation, sustainability, and destruction all in one. So that's the nature of feminine energy. And it just is what it is. The nature of the feminine body itself, it gives you a better understanding of Iyami if you look at it esoterically, if you understand it esoterically. Even the breast are nurturing. They're designed for nurturing. I know some people think it's just sexual, but it is a nurturing thing. So this adds to another level. All of these are qualities that are a part of Iyami.
It's interesting you say that, because I've gotten into a lot of discussions where, when we talk about women being submissive, that there's a certain role in a woman's that women should be playing on this earth as submissive and not dominant, and that dominant energy, or that anger and certain things that women have, is not a female trait or a feminine trait. That submission is a feminine trait, and that being kind of nurturing is a feminine trait. However, that aspect to be angry or to be a warrior, that is not a feminine trait. So, but if you understand that that we have our dual side, what is the understanding of that when it comes down to Iyami and the femininity?
Well, you again, nothing that's just one dimensional. In terms of how people perceive, women are supposed to be submissive, those are politics. They can be religious politics, political politics, but they are primarily politics. And they are politics that are perpetuated in order to ensure that there is one who is superior and one who is inferior, because many of the societies are based on caste systems. Somebody's got to be ahead of someone else, right? So all of those things are primarily politics. But when it comes to one, in the Ifa Orisha tradition, and also when it comes to history, and also when it comes to nature, it's not that simple. It'd be cool to be that simple, but it's not that simple, because within West African tradition, we have warriors. And let me be clear about something. People, because you associated anger with warriors, and let me help you understand that a skilled warrior doesn't have to hold anger. They just have to hold purpose. It's not necessarily about anger or not anger, because anger can actually be a taboo, but purposeful, making a purposeful effect, and handling a job and doing a mission, that is not about anger. But more importantly, when it comes to what energy we hold the energy of fire, water, air, and earth in different aspects of our lives, and it shows up. Within the West African tradition, we have warriors. If you've seen the warrior, the woman king, you will see the warriors. We have the original West African Amazons. They were fighters. They were feminine, but they were fighters. Then you also have the queens. They were feminine. Or some of them were warriors. One of my leader, Orisha Oya, she was a queen warrior. She fought next to and often in front of Shango. In fact, it is said that she could whoop Shango. So these are things that are not a part of our West African ancestry. These are things that are not a part of our African ancestry, because we also have warriors who are in the Kikuyu and other traditions and so on, who were warriors and warrior queens, Ya, Santiwa, and so on. So when we take on the traditions and the belief systems of colonialists, of those who put us in captivity, of those who are not a part of our culture, and yet we accept them as our own, then we accept that as our truth, then that creates the confusion. And what it does when a woman does it, if you accept an identity that is not who you truly are, if you identify in a way that is not how you were actually created to be, then it's going to eventually cause confusion. It's going to cause suppression. It's going to cause a problem in general. So, there are some women we consider to be very cool in water. Some of the Orisha are very cool, or Oshun, cool, water associated with coolness, patience. That doesn't mean that she won't fight, right? People have an association. They think, oh, Oshun is cool. That doesn't mean she won't fight. She's just going to fight differently. She's going to fight in a different way than someone who might be in a direct warrior mode or otherwise. With Oshun's way of fighting sometimes is withdrawal. Baby, if water is what you need to survive, then not having water will kill you. It's just by withholding. So those are the type, when we look at qualities, we're drawing our qualities from our nature, not from a theological perspective, right? And not from a patriarchal perspective, a colonialist perspective, an Abrahamic perspective. We're drawing from nature itself, and that is tied to what you came here to do. So some women came here to fight. Some women came here to be warriors. Some women came here to be the traditional mothers and so on. Some women came to be administrators. Some women came to be, laid back, to be taken care of, to be a pillow princess. Some people did. Some women came to do it all at different parts and times in their life. In our traditions, we often recognize different aspects of who we are throughout our lifetime. So who you are in your youth and who you are if and when you become a biological mother or any type of mother, who you are when you become a grandmother, who you are when your menstrual cycle ceases and you become an elder. Those are different phases of your life. And typically you can manifest a variety of different things at different times of your life. In the Yoruba tradition, they actually recognize women once they're past their menstrual cycle. They almost identify as men, in a sense. They are given recognition. You will find references to Oshun and Oya as the bearded woman and the bearded mother. And that is one because, the estrogen and the progesterone began to change and shift, and it creates chin hairs and so on and so forth. But that is a sign also of the androgens in your body. And androgens, there are some that are testosterone androgens and so on. So all of those things are tied into how we act, how we respond, as well as our cultural proclivities. Our societal proclivities, our family proclivities, and so on and so forth. So we don't really adhere to that. We're not in that way. We do recognize that coolness, patience, and balance, whether you're male or whether you're female, is essential for true wisdom, and that it's necessary in our societies. But we also know there is a time for peace and there is a time for war.
Wow. And I wanted to show you this to get your opinion on it, because I think it's an interesting discussion where you have the different sides of femininity. A lot of times with the current situation with what's going on, kind of this battle between, how a woman should behave right now in America. Like the men are saying we need to go back to the time where women were submissive and this, that, the other. And so when they looked at this lady, they said, okay, well, see, she's being feminine, but then the other woman is not being feminine. So I wanted to show you, and I wanted to get your opinion on this, because I think that it's just two different archetypes of women. It's not necessarily one's being more feminine or less feminine. It's just that there's different types of versions of the feminine energy. Let's go.
I teach femininity.
Oh, you teach femininity?
I do.
Why do you have to teach femininity?
Because women have lost it today.
How did they lose it?
Because they're trying to compete with men as men, and we've lost our femininity.
So you think femininity is just talking like this?
Absolutely not. That's not me at all.
No. When you say that women have been fierce, you're African.
I am.
Do you know they're fierce African warrior women?
Absolutely, but they're still feminine.
How are they feminine when they were slicing people's heads off, ripping them apart?
You know what?
You're saying you teach femininity.
I
I'm going
do.
to gamble and say that you teach them not to do those things.
Well, people do what they have to do in the time that they live to survive. There was a time when we had to grow our own crops and slaughter our animals. We don't do that anymore.
So they don't have to survive today.
I didn't say that. I said that.
You said women lost it today.
I said women lost their femininity. Please don't speak for me.
Well, no, you said women lost their femininity today. And I said, you're from Africa.
I am.
Warriors.
Women were.
They had to do it back then.
Not
but
only.
Today, you said they don't have to do it now. They don't have to survive, women.
What I said is we all did what we had to survive in the time
And they
that we
don't do
were
that
living.
today?
If I may
Women don't-
finish.
No, you can finish. I'm asking you, do they do it today?
Yes,
So you teach femininity.
I
Do you
do.
teach women that they should be sweet and kind or be warriors?
I teach women that they shouldn't be men.
Wait a minute. Do you teach them to be sweet and kind or do you teach them to be warriors?
If you want to
If
be,
a woman fights a man,
I wasn't
no, I'm
finished.
going to ask you. I got to
Okay.
get, because
You've
I
asked me
can't
multiple.
let this niceness throw me off.
Yeah,
When a
I'm
woman is
struggling
when a
that you're
woman is
bothered by
fighting,
it.
because you said you teach femininity.
I
When
do.
a woman is fighting,
Women
do you
shouldn't
say
fight.
that's manly or
It
you say
is.
feminine?
It's very
So,
masculine.
If it's manly,
It
they
is.
are-
I wanted to like get into that. So she says that is very fighting is masculine, a masculine trait. Is that a masculine trait to fight?
Let me start with this. The idea of femininity and masculinity is a social construct based on cultural ideals. It is not a universal truth. It's simply not. When I deal with things, as I said before, I move in terms of nature. Nature is a truth. It's going to be what it is, whether it is 2026 or whether it is a million years ago. Nature will be nature, right? So when it comes in social constructs of what a woman is, what a woman does, that changes from culture to culture. That is not a universal truth. It's simply not. So I can't really respond to anytime someone tries to pigeonhole you into a social construct, whether what they think, a stereotype of what Black people are, what women are, what men are, or otherwise, then it becomes a problem because you're pigeonholed into something. So it's about really, like I said, each person has a different nature. Now, when I deal with femininity, the divine feminine, and so on, I am speaking of the social construct and the spiritual nature based on the attributes that the body provides, right? Form and function, they work together. So if you, like I said, if you look at the form, you look at the function. Now, whether a woman will fight, yes, they will. A woman will try. A woman whose child is threatened will tear you apart. At least I will. Try me on my own child. Yeah, it is what it is. And when it comes to fighting for truth, for justice, like I said, it's not my social construct. So I can't, when they base these things, it's based on, most of the time, patriarchal Abrahamic traditions that have pigeonholed women, but it is not based on my ancestry. It's not based on indigenous traditions. It's based on one social construct and what they believe is feminine or masculine and otherwise. And based on those things, it is also based on hierarchical principles and things of that nature. So like I said, I couldn't get into it. When it comes to whether a woman is sweet, she can be sweet. She can be sour. She can be bitter. She can be wise. But, that is what it is. Now, if I wanted to be an argumentative and people would say, like you were saying, oh, in this day, women need to go back to being submissive and they want things to go back, then I could use that same association towards men. Men need to learn how to build houses. They need to know how to put things together, and they need to know true protection, because what we have is a lot of people who are saying that, and many of those who are really, really pushing it don't know how to build a house by themselves. They don't know how to go get food outside of going to the grocery store. There are traditional masculine rules that go along with it. What they're talking about is the role that you're going to play, not your nature. And so I think we have to differentiate that. There's a difference between the role and your soul and your nature.
Wow, that was well put. Man, I couldn't have said it better myself. You know what? It's even crazier. Babies fight. Babies cry. They get angry. So why can't we? If we can love our babies and be unconditional in love with our babies, why is it that when a woman is showing her anger and showing her frustration, that now, no, you're supposed to just bottle it all in and just become submissive with it and just scream in the car, cry in the car? Like, we're not supposed to express ourselves,
It again, what you have are people's social constructs. They said the same thing about slaves. Oh, slaves, obey your master. right? They say the same thing. What you have, and I hate when these conversations happen with us, particularly in communities of color, because you end up having, as a Black woman, we get a double, we get it double. We get it from the European society that likes to impose on what it means to be Black and how we should act. And oh, if we're the angry Black woman, they like to tag on labels. Labels give people the ability to control your status, right? Control how people see you. And that's what they use it for. And in order to do that, and that's to get the upper hand. But those labels are applied to Black people. Now those labels are applied to women and so on. But this idea of submissiveness was just as much applied to Black men as slaves as it is, as they are now trying to apply it to Black women, to them. So you have this dynamic that when you're in a society and it has been oppressed and who your true nature is has been suppressed, then you end up, some groups end up imitating the very society and the very culture that actually oppressed them. And that's what you end up having. That's what I mean by taking on traditions and belief systems that are not a part of your inherent ancestral traditions, that are not a part of your inherent ancestral bloodline, because it's within the blood. People don't realize your blood carries the DNA, it carries the beliefs, it carries our gifts, our blessings, and also our challenges. It's in that blood. And so it's important for us to look at, where did these things and these ideas come from? And why do I believe that is the truth? Is it because someone wrote it down, right? Because someone wrote it down and therefore that is the truth? Because what proof do you have that that is actually so? What proof can you see in nature that mirrors that as actually so? Those are the things that we have to ask ourselves when it comes to femininity. In the Yoruba tradition, there is a concept called abo and ako, right? So abo represents what would normally, it's kind of like if you understand yin and yang. So it's a subtle movement, subtle energy. It moves differently. Ako is more assertive and more aggressive. Now, when it's translated into Western language, it shows up as male and it shows up as female, but it's not really that. We're talking about energy, right? We're talking about whether it is kinetic energy, whether it's moving energy, or whether it's slow moving energy, whether it is softer energy, or whether it is masculine energy. And it can change and it can move depending on the situation, the circumstances, and otherwise. So that is why you can have those ideals. But we have to understand that even in West Africa, it was colonialized. So a lot of the things we have problems with, it's also because of the language, the translations, and how those languages have translated into Western paradigms and so on. But the idea is energy in and of itself. And it lends itself more to kind of like yin and yang. If you're familiar with yin and yang, if you see the yin and yang symbol, there's a little bit of yang within that yin. There's a little bit of yin within that yang, right? That's the black and white and so on and so forth. That is the same with abo and ako, right? That there are different ways. Water is going to fight you differently than fire. Wind is going to address you differently than earth. Each has its own qualities, but each qualities will address when there is a problem differently. That's just, again, I go back to nature.
You know, it seems to me that I think that if more people actually learned about like some of these traditional understandings, that a lot of times that when it comes to understanding a person's behavior, you will say, okay, well, that person's more fiery, you know. They're more water. They're more smooth when it comes down, but water can be fierce, you know. But when you have that understanding overall, like you won't get upset about it. You know, also in Ifa, it tells us to have when we have a Iwapele, right? A gentle character, right? Mm-hmm. So does that mean suppression, or does that mean to, hey, you should just kind of like figure out how to like deal with things from a gentle nature? What does that really mean, Iwapale?
The gentleman is the gentle nature is really about not being reactionary, right? It is about wisdom has to be cool and slow, because when we're in our youth, you're very reactionary. As you get older, you start to see that some things as you thought that they were, it's not that big of a deal. You thought it was bigger at that point. That is what wisdom. So wisdom learns to cool down, to not immediately respond and not immediately react, because we need to understand things better. In order for you to understand, you can't make assumptions. You have to take time to go inside and look at a thing and unpack it in order to see it clearly. That, can be translated to ego, right? So the idea of being gentle in terms of Iwapwele is really not allowing your ego to lead, not allowing, and what we call in the Western world, that ego to be in front, to be cool and relaxed, to take your time before you make judgments. Because sometimes when you're acting quickly, when you're acting fiery and so on, and you jump to conclusions, you can create more problems than you solve, right? There is a time when you must respond quickly, right? And there is a time when you must relax and so on. But as a wisdom keeper and as a diviner, as someone who is going to be a healer in the community, as someone who is bringing wisdom in the community, you can't act all kinds of ways. That you have to act with some restraint, with some emotional regulation. That is about self-mastery, right? Self-mastery is how we begin to build wisdom, how you begin to see things and solve problems and so on. Without self-control, without self-regulation, without the ability to see beyond your own immediate perspective, needs, wants, desires, and so on and so forth, you're very limited in your ability to help people, to support people, whether it's individually in your family, or even do the things that you need to do for your own life. So that is a part of that's the bigger communication regarding Iwapwele. It is not just being passive, right? You can say no, right, and still be gentle about it. You can just say no, right? I used to have to really be pushed in order for me to say, no, and boom, and then all of a sudden one day it was like, I don't have to get all hot under the collar. I can just say no. This is not working for me, and be okay. I don't have to get riled up. I don't have to get highly emotional about it. I don't have to argue with people over it. No, that's not working for me. And I can be okay with that. And they can get mad. They can get hot, but it's up to me to control me and my response to it. So that's the thing. You're not allowing yourself to get caught up in the drama, not allowing yourself to get caught up in the emotion of the moment, in the reactionary stages that end up undermining you. And often they tend to undermine you more than they help and support you in the end. You might get an immediate gratification of a response, but the long-term consequences of such can often be devastating. So that's what Iwapwele is really about.
So I wanted to bring this full circle and go right back into Iyami, right? Because when they think about Iyami, they think of Iyami as this kind of fierce being, fierce group of mothers that you must be feared. And then you said that these mothers can also be nurturing. They can also be kind, and they're not just always just out just rampaging and just issuing out punishment, right? But there's so much fear about them, right? So let's talk about how do Iyami represent authority rather than simply motherhood. So you have the authority that's going to tell you, hey, but then you also have that motherhood that's a nurturer that's going to also mother you through the situation. So it's not necessarily where you're being punished, but there's a lesson to be learned about what's going on, about how things should actually be run or done, or etc. What are your thoughts on that?
Who says that motherhood can't also be authority? Right? The as I said before.
Hold on, but you know what? Before you say that, because see, I want to show the difference between because Abrahamic, right? they say that the father is the authority, the mother is the nurturer, and then the man is the authority in the other faith. So that's why the mother wouldn't be. So a lot of people might be watching this that are Christian, or might not be in the Yoruba pantheon. So they wouldn't think of a mother as authority,
Again,
right? They would say that.
it's a social construct. I was raised as a Christian, but again, who is to say that if that is your religion, that's your religion. It's not my truth, nor is it a universal truth. It's simply not. Mothers, if nothing else, right, and even within the Abrahamic traditions, mothers are teachers, right? The first person to teach you is often your mother. Why? Because you're at her breast, you're at her knee early on. The first person to feed you is your mother. That is the person who is responsible for your very survival, right? That is your mother. When you're in the womb, you are 100% dependent on her body. Dad did what he had to do, but you're dependent on her taking care of you, taking care of herself. Now, there might be the father that may be there to take care of the mother, but her authority is established because she gave birth to you. She is your creator. Literally, your very body, the very cells in your body were created out of her and her own blood. Right? Now, whether you acknowledge that, that's of course, that's up to you. But that is the bottom line. That's actual biology. That's what happens. So when it comes to authority, authority is again, if it's in the construct of who's in charge, there are ways that men try to establish authority over women, and there are ways that women automatically have authority over other things. Again, it is a useless argument, to be honest with you. That useless who is in charge. Each person has to do different things. I wish I should have told my husband to come down and have that conversation as well, because he and I have a really great relationship, those of us who know, and so on. And he is not he's not a small man. He's a big and a king. Literally, he is, an Oba and Omo Shango and so on and so forth. And he feels absolutely no threat in me doing the things that I do, because he's good at certain things. I'm good at certain things. We don't have to argue about that. When I'm able to thrive, he's able to thrive. When he's able to thrive, I'm able to thrive. And it's a mutually beneficial situation. But it is not a matter of who is in authority. I don't ask him permission to do anything. I discuss with him my plans. He discusses with me his plans. We assess if it's worth it, and so on, from a communal perspective, not in terms of asking permission. And when it comes to the children, we stand side by side. And so, hey, if he says something, I'm going to support him. But if I say something, he's going to support me as well. It's simply, we spend this time focusing on who's going to be the authority in the house. And there's a greater society that wants to be the authority over all of us. And so we waste our time on these useless conversations instead of allowing people to be who they were created to be. Right? And we're disturbed by it, and it creates all kinds of problems. And what that really boils down to is who wants to be in control, who feels power and who doesn't feel power, and who wants to feel power and who they want to make powerless. That's what that really boils down to. All of those things, they're nice conversations, but they don't further us. Because too many times, those who feel threatened by someone else's authority is really a reflection of their own insecurity. Their own feeling like, hey, I need you to act like this in order for me to feel like what I want to feel like. And anytime your feelings about yourself is dependent on someone else doing what you want them to do or acting in a certain way, anytime you're dependent on that, you're actually at a weaker position, because it's complete. They have the complete control over you. So even though, hey, I can act submissive, right? I can dress nice, and I can be soft, and I can be feminine, and I can smile, and I can be very, very soft and so on, and I can poison your ass.
Right.
I can take some hot grits in a cast iron skillet and beat your ass with it. Right?
In a very kind way.
In a very kind way, baby. I can slowly sprinkle arsenic on your powdered donuts every day, and sweetheart, here you go, and so on and so forth, and you'll be dead.
And that's what they did during slavery, didn't they?
I'm just saying, the whole, I can play the role, right? You can play the role, but that doesn't, it's an illusion. It is an illusion. You're playing a role, which means that you're not living from your soul. You're really, really not. There are some things that your hormones will make you more prone to. That is biological, right? There are times when, yeah, you need to relax a little bit. There are times when you need to work hard. And sometimes your hormones can dictate that. That's a hormonal thing. That has nothing to do with actual your state of being.
You know what I just thought about? You know what? You better be hoping that woman's up there just screaming when she's mad. At least she's screaming. At least you know she's mad.
It's true, because when she's quiet, the quiet, subtle woman is 10 times more dangerous than the one that's loud and just gonna say, I don't like that. The one that says, I don't like that, she's gonna bring it to you real, right? You know where you stand. The one that's quiet and does every single thing that you want, woo-wee. Because that's the one that is not what I say when I'm mad, baby. It's what I stop saying. It's when I stop talking altogether that you really got problems.
Man, you know what? That is 100%.
Once I stop talking, I'm going to show you. I'm going to stop trying to tell you. I'm just going to, you go know.
Right.
That's around and find out moment.
Watch out. Yeah. F around and find out.
Okay, baby. I got you.
Okay, I'll be quiet. All right.
I was looking at, there was a woman who I don't even want to get to that. That'll sidetrack. But just know that those women, a lot of, and I'm not saying all passive women or anything, but I'm saying there is something to the ideas that when a woman is fed up, right? They're not, and there are some that's just going to say, they're going to argue with you. There are some that are going to quietly undermine you, take all your money, take your kids, and leave you hanging.
And they ain't going to say nothing. They ain't going to argue with you or nothing. Just going to be very quietly, just ruin your whole life.
Just there you are, right? That's why you treat people with respect. You treat people with the respect you want to be treated with. If you treat each other with honor, if you treat each other with respect, if you treat each other with kindness and generosity, you'll go a lot farther with both of you than trying to dominate over someone else.
Wow, man, that's deep. But when you think about it, so when we talk about the relationship between the Iyami and the concept of Ashe, what is the relationship between those two? Power. Ashe equals power, by the way, for those that don't know, or like the energy of power, right? Ashe.
It's interesting because one of my mentors was just speaking, or one of his children was just speaking about the concept of Ashe, and Ashe actually representing feminine energy. There are layers to what Ashe can represent in that regard. There is the power of the word. There are many qualities that are associated specifically with Iyami, and that is the sound in and of itself, right? Part of sound and how it creates the universe and so on. So the ability, the Ashe that comes with that feminine energy, it has the ability to create, to sustain, or to destroy just by what they speak into existence, just by what they not even speak, what they think. It's the words in their mind that can create certain things as well. That is a type of Ashe. Now, different people, it's like money. Different people have different degrees. Some people got a lot of money. Some people got a little money. Everybody might have some money, but the degree that you have it is going to depend on, one, how you cultivated it within yourself, and how you use it, So all of those things can play a part in the power that you emanate. But I will say that some of the examples, right? I will take the example going back to the church of the praying grandmother, right? Some of us had praying grandmothers, and those praying grandmothers would get up at dawn, right? Or just before dawn, and they would pray for the whole family, right? And they would say, my grandmother was one of those that she could put her hands on you and she will start praying. And if you were sick, you will heal. I have had it happen. I have seen it happen. Those are that's the kind of ashe that you have. It is the ashe that connects to the earth itself, because the earth hears her voice. Man, the greatest ashe that a woman can have is when she's pregnant. I learned that early on when I got pregnant, that my prayers were potent. I mean, it was like that. If I said, I need this, I need that, boom, it was there. It's just that most of us haven't been taught how to discipline ourselves enough to focus and say what we need to say, or call it into existence. It's learning how to manifest. These are things that are natural to us, but if we've never been taught how to use what is natural to us, and we've never been taught how to use that ashe, then it will go to waste. So that is something that is very interesting. Ashe, we have the ashe of insight, women's intuition, right? That is another type of ashe that we have, that what they call women's intuition, our ability to sight, spiritual sight, right? Whereas there are things that are associated with the ancient mothers, from ancient Kemet on to now, that are associated with sight. One of the protections of a nation, they would have, some societies would have, the men were the physical warriors, the women were the spiritual warriors, right? Because women could come together in certain circles and they could do spiritual attacks on the enemy. They could do spiritual, psychic attacks and so on and so forth on the enemy and never leave their house, right? This is how some of that energy can work, and they will do it in different ways. So, ashe can show up in many ways. There's ashe of cooking. There's, a variety of different spiritual power and how you can make it manifest, from your voice, from your sight, even spiritual hearing, the intuitive side, the ability to direct energy, the ability to manifest, and the ability, when one is suppressing a lot of anger, to destroy stuff too.
You know what's so crazy is that, when you go to a church, they'll have a bunch of women surround a person. A person will go up to the front of the church. And I want to also welcome Napashada to the stage. She just now was able to join us, but we're talking about ashe, the power, the word ashe, and the Iyami in their ability for ashe power. And it's interesting because if you go to a church, it'll usually be older women that'll surround.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay, this is a real honor to be able to join and to be able to sit with this this queen and hear her break down divine femininity. I am loving this. I'm just going to flow with it. So thank you for letting me join.
Yes, thank you, thank you for joining. Yes, so we've gotten into the discussion about ashe and Iyami and how important ashe is when it comes down to the Iyami. The Iyami being the primordial energy of the divine feminine, and people are afraid of this energy, the darkness, right? So, but it's interesting, like I said, where we get into it is that when you go to a church, right? It'll be a sick person. The person will go to the front of the church, and then they'll get all of the older women that'll come and surround that person and pray. So that is ashe. They don't even know that this is a thing called ashe, or do they know that that's ashe?
I mean,
they know that there's something that these older women have in their prayers that
they know the what, but they forgot the why. A lot of people forgot the why. A lot of the things that people do in the church came from African traditions. They just translated it into church lingo in the best way that they could. So in different African diasporic audiences, they converted many of those beliefs in how they do things from African traditions and into the church in the ways that they could. So for instance, with the Orisha and so on, they hid in Cuba and then in Latin America under certain Catholic saints, because Catholicism was very, very big with the Spanish and the Portuguese and so on and so forth. So they hid a lot of their traditions under the guise of those saints. Within the Baptist church and within and so on in America, a lot of the tools were also tied to many of those traditions, and so on. So all of those things came together. So yes, the motherboard and the mothers in white and all of that in old times, absolutely. They just forgot the why. They forgot that it was a part of it's something they've always done. It's something that is very familiar, but it is something that you forgot the why.
And the usher board always wears white. It's always a bunch of older women wearing white.
It's the priestesses. You know, many of our initiatory traditions did carry on. They just couldn't carry on with regard to the names that they assigned to them, but many of them did. The white head wrap, right? I was looking, one of the signatures of someone who had undergone what they call the old religion. So they stopped really in African diaspora traditions, and even what became of hoodoo, right? It started from what they called the old religion. I practiced the old religion, and part of what practicing the old religion meant, you going out into nature for a time. You might be fasting, you might be by yourself or whatever it is, but you're connecting to nature and you're looking for a response from nature. And that begins to guide you into how you're going to move in your life. So that might be several days, that might be a month, it may be under a mentor or otherwise, but this is something that would be a part of that. And so you'd sit under a tree, you would lay under a tree, and then once that happened, then you would go to the river and you would get a river bath and so on and so forth. So what they have that now, like the church that I grew up in, I didn't even realize it was one of those types of hoodoo churches. You would have to sit on the bench, right? There's this wood bench, and you sat on that bench every single Sunday until you got the Holy Spirit, right? And once you got the Holy Spirit, only then could you be baptized. So then you dress up in your white, and they had the white head rags, and we all went down to the river, right? And you would do the same things and so on. Those are initiatory rites that have been done since time immemorial. And that are also done in Africa. This is not just an Abrahamic thing, right? This is something that is done, that's almost a global indigenous thing that is done. And so you take many of those habits, the motherboard and how they dealt with things, and the white. So those people who had undergone those particular rites, they would wear a white head wrap. So you see, like in slave pictures, and even within slavery and right afterwards, there would be people with colored head ties, and there would be people with white head ties. And the people with white head ties were often the sign that that person had undergone some type of initiation. They were some type of healer. They were some type of doctor, spiritual doctor in some form or another. The names changed, the traditions changed. They just forgot the why.
Wow, that's man, that's crazy when you think about that. That this translated across the board. It got into Christianity, but people forgot. People don't even understand the connection. Wow.
Yeah, there's so many things they don't understand. Now that wooden bench that you would sit on, that's what the tree translated to. That wooden bench that you would sit on, the mourner's bench.
Dr. Kumari, may I ask you to talk to us about how it in the Abrahamic faith, especially in Christianity, it's been used against women, saying you better cover your head if you pray. You know how they say there's a tradition, especially in very strict religions. I'm going to speak about the Hebrew Israelites and Islam. They, with that, that head wrap, they'll say, if you don't cover your head, the angels will come and take advantage of you as a woman, or you're an evil woman if you don't cover your head. Have you heard about that before?
I have, but I'm a theologian, so I studied them all, and I studied before they came into existence as well. So I have a layered answer to that, right?
I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it.
The idea about covering one's head is not just them. This is about your crown. So if you recognize a spiritual crown, each of us have a spiritual crown and how it connects and so on. So there is something about covering your head, but not just for women, also for men, especially if you're undergoing spiritual rites. It's a form of protection in that regard. Even with regard to the way that women dress and so on. So in those traditions, right? And I'm not saying that this is truth. I'm going back to just in those traditions. The idea of covering oneself actually came from goddess traditions. It did not come from masculine traditions. It was then enforced and it was subjugated. It became a symbol of subjugation as men took over, but they came from goddess traditions because women represent the mystery. The mystery in those traditions, especially, so like before women were circling before men were circling the Kaaba, it was a feminine energy, right? In Islam, and there were priestesses. There would be 7 priestesses, and they would be all covered. Then they would be circling the Kaaba, right? And that is to bring about that energy, but it represented the mystery that you can't just roll up and see. It represented a mystery. So women's mysteries have always been the focus in figuring out how to crack the veil, right? That was an extension. So whether it was the habit that nuns wear, right? Or whether it was the the name of it is
the hijab, the niqab, and hijab.
They're all doing the same thing, but they came actually from ancient goddess traditions. Many people don't know that. Even in wearing the color black, the black veil, and so on, because that represents the womb, right? And so on. So if we go back far enough, they didn't really invent anything. They just what is the word? They retold the story. They reinterpreted what it was supposed to be. Right. So in that regard, you cannot. In our tradition, I wear head wraps all the time. But recently I haven't. It's hot and so on.
Right.
I can wear them. I don't have to wear them. They don't define me. They don't limit me either. But if I'm undergoing certain spiritual ceremonies and things of that nature, I'm going to wear my head wrap. If I'm dealing with other people and their traditions and I'm exposed to a lot of crazy energy, I'm at home. I don't have to wear one.
Right.
And I'm exposed to a lot of energy. I'm going to do some protections because I don't want to be exposed to everybody else's old funky energy.
Wow. Thank you for that. Thank you for breaking that down. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
But it's a matter of protecting one's crown, right? We have in our tradition, our crown is called our Ori, and it is our divine connection to source. Each person has one. So there are certain rites that we might do on our head. And as a part of those rites, afterwards, we might cover our head and so on. So there are different reasons, but it's not, it's not the interpretation that we're often given as to why.
And thank you for that breakdown. That is that clears up a lot. I do want to mention also a part of the Bible where it says that a woman can be taken captive if a man wants her. And one of the rituals it says to do to her is shave her head and cut her nails. So is that must be like that spiritual energy that you're referring to?
The idea of shaving one's head, in our tradition, it doesn't just apply to women. Right?
Okay.
It applies to anyone if you're having some issues and so on. When we undergo our initiations, our rites require that we shave our heads. It's not just women, it's men too. You can't have locks.
Wow.
You can't have hair.
Beautiful.
But that is, again, it is exposing your Ori because we are realigning your Ori to your divine purpose, right? When it's imposed as a form of control and punishment, it shifts the whole meaning around it. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yes, ma'am.
It shifts the whole energy around it. It's not just men. It's not just women that have an Ori. Men have an Ori. Men need to be cleaned. They need to every now and then they need their own renewal and cut off their hair and shave their heads and realign with source, however they perceive that source or that divinity to be. So it's our interpretations and how we translate things, right? It's the assumptions that we make. It's most things are not bad in and of themselves. It's when it's imposed as a system of control
Yes.
and manipulation and domination that it becomes problematic.
Wow. You know, when we talk about this, it's so interesting how you make it clear that it's not just women, it's men and women. And they're, you know, I'm listening to you. I heard you say the thing about when you're soft and sweet, you still could be mixing up a real mean batch on somebody. So people use hair to work magic on people too, don't they? Don't they use their hair, or is that not true?
People can use hair. People can use any body thing or any energetic. People can use anything to impact you if you know what you're doing. It's not just hair. They can use a piece of your clothes. They can use any number of things to
wow.
impact you. So it's not
They can use your picture, right? They can use your picture, right?
Image and whatever. You know, a lot of people use a lot of tools. I'll tell you something about Iyami energy and Ajay energy, because there's Ajay, that energy that women carry naturally. Those that have that strong energy that carry it naturally through their bloodlines and so on, they don't need any of that stuff. They need a thought.
Talk. Wow.
Thought. That's it. Those who
Yep.
truly know, you don't need it. People can use all of those things, but those that have that kind of Ajay energy that is very strong, they just need a thought.
That is why when I showed that Umar Johnson, he said that this year is not the year to be fooling around with based on Osa Meji, right? He talked about the Iyami energy that is happening. It's a very feminine primordial energy that this year is based on, with Osa Meji being the Odu for the year. We talked about the Odu of the year and how that Iyami energy is prominent. It's not necessarily to be feared, but it's to be understood that, you know, divine justice can come into play if you don't get yourself right when it comes down to. But it's not a petty thing. It's not like, oh, you didn't take the trash out yesterday and now you're going to be punished by Iyami.
Now, women by themselves, a good example of that is the color purple, Celie, right?
Yeah.
What you do to me, already done to you.
Yes, thank you.
Right? All she said was a couple of words. She pointed. What you do to me is already done to you. That's a whole. That man has been convicted.
Yes.
He has been convicted. And you see how it manifests throughout the story. And while that is a fictional story, it's a very real phenomenon. It can be a very real phenomenon for when a woman's fed up. Right?
Yes.
So while there's cosmic, again, going back, there's the cosmic energy, there's the energy associated in earth, there's the ancestral mothers, there's the celestial mothers, and then there's women who are in existence that just carry a strong energy with them, that also have some forms of power. There are some men that carry energy from their mothers. They're called Osho, right? Who also carry that kind of energy as well, but they are in service to the mothers and the feminine energy.
Quick question. Do you think that this time with the Osa Meji, it's also important for women to watch what they say, because they could carry an Iyami energy, and what they say now can be more powerful than ever before? Like if you are say something against somebody, it can manifest a lot quicker. Do you think that could be a situation with this energy right now?
Absolutely. And that goes back to the need to learn self-restraint, self-mastery, emotional regulation, and to be calm and not reactionary. See, they all go together, right? Yes, you have that ability. Women can destroy their families. They can create the family. They can destroy their families. They can build up their children. They can tear their kids down, right? But no one.
I brought you in this world. I'll take you out, right?
It's true. It's true. But no one is exempt from the consequences of their actions. That's important to realize. No one is exempt from the consequences of their actions, right? That's why I say that if you use that, Iyami is just as much. They will come after women just as much as they'll come after men if you are unjust. If you are unjust, they will cut your money off too. They will, if you are unjust, a lot of physical illnesses and so on and so forth can manifest as a form of consequence. I want to move away from punishment and move more into the idea of consequence when it comes to things that happen. There is a consequence. You can do what you want to do, but it's cause and effect. That doesn't exempt you from the consequences. So if you're thinking, many people, hey, he get on my nerves, and just say that you have that random thought, right? Someone that you actually really love, but you're just saying it casually, and then they mess around and they get into an accident, right? And deep inside what you see it, and that could manifest, right? In that regard. That's why it's important. When women actually had the ability to go under training, when we had women's schools, you had to learn how to be a woman. Once your menstrual cycle started, or just before, there were rites of passage, and as a part of that, you learned self-restraint. It wasn't submission. It was self-restraint. It was self-control, right? It was how to look at things and view things, because you have to you're responsible for what you create and what you destroy. You're responsible for it. So you can't just respond on a whim in that regard.
Because we have so much power.
Yeah,
Our power, we have a little bit more power.
Abuse of power, whether you're male or female, is still abuse of power. And sometimes, when we talk about that, you get angry because you feel powerless. The issue is sometimes not the person. The issue is that you have to take your power back. You've given it away. Now you're mad that somebody has abused it. And, but the issue is really you giving it away. So once you learn how to take your power back, you don't have to do that, right? It ain't their fault. They were the test. They were just a test. How you respond, that's on you. So these are things that, that have to balance, we have to understand balance, right? It's not just one thing. I'm a big advocate of women, and that is because we have spent thousands of years under oppression, right? We have spent thousands of years, especially Black women, both with European oppression and patriarchal oppression in our own communities. So I'm a big advocate of that. But I'm not absent to the fact that there are many women who can manipulate and abuse power as well. And you just do it differently. You might not beat them up, but with your tongue, you can cut a person apart, and they'll never forget that. They'll always be, they'll be stuck for the rest of their lives because of certain things that you said, because you have that kind of ashe.
Wow. And with Iyami, why must the power of Iyami be respected by kings, priests, and other spiritual authorities? And do Iyami represent a form of feminine justice when social or spiritual balance has been violated?
Let me start with the king part. Because it is the mother's line that kings are born. When you look at kings in Africa, whether it from and I'll say, I won't say it because I don't know it's 3 or 5,000 ethnic groups. I can say from East Coast, let's start with ancient kings, right? If we start with ancient kings in ancient Egypt, ancient Kemet, if we look at the crown of Osir, then we will see birds, right? One of the big signatures of Iyami are birds, right? These are beings that can move from the earth to the celestial realm, to the heavens, and so on. So you'll see within their crowns, within the Osir crown, you'll see it's a pointed crown, and it has 2 ostrich feathers on the side of it, right? That is the signature of Iyami, because the king's line came through the mother's line. It was the mother. They have to go through mother's rights, ancient women's rights. It is the women that crown the king. And without that, you don't have the ashe to be the king, right? So when they put that crown on, that crown itself is shaped like a womb. It literally is a womb. The crown of Osir, it's a womb. When we see that crown in Heru, right? Heru also becomes represented by the bird, hawk, it's another bird, right? So that is a signature. In ancient Kemet, the mothers were Mut, you know, or Mu or Nu, Na, different, you know, vowel sounds and so on and so forth. But within their crowns, they would have the serpent, they would have the snake, cobra, and they would, or they would have the vulture, right? So if we take those symbols, right, these are all Iyami symbols. And those who know, if you know, you know, right? But they're all symbols. They say they represent lower and upper Egypt, and they very well might, but they also represent spiritual insight, and they're being crowned of the divine mothers. Now you take that same imagery, right? The vultures, the serpents, the crowns, and so on. Let's move now from the Nile to the Niger, because there was a Nile to Niger trade route, right? So in Nigeria now, let's just say in West Africa now, you will look at the crowns, and the Oba's crowns, they're pointed, and they almost always have birds on them in some form or another. You will see that's one of them, absolutely. But look at the other Ade crowns. I wish I could move, because my husband is an Oba. He had his crown is like that, and it has birds on it, and so on. But they also represent that. The idea of the vulture in West Africa, in East Africa, is associated with a nurturing bird. Vultures are very nurturing mothers. They will, you know, do what they have to. In West Africa, it becomes translated to some forms of Iyami, but often Oshun, right? In various areas of and aspects of that. The serpents represent the mothers, because the ancient mermaids, people connect the water spirits with mermaids and so on and so forth. So yeah, those are some of those symbols. But the mermaids are originally were half depicted as half human, half snake, not half fish. But these are ancient stories. Now that's translated to Mami Wata. That's translated to water spirits. It's translated to water divinities and so on. But all of them, I don't know if you can't see this symbol back here. It's a whole Iyami Osa Meji image there. But those are things that represent and that crown that. So when a person is crowned in West Africa now, you still have to go through Iyami rites. There is not one Oba who doesn't go through Iyami rites. And those rites are secret, but they have to go through those rites in order for them, it's their authentication, in order for them to be confirmed. If they don't go through those rites, they don't have the protection. They don't have the authority. They don't have the ashe. But they all have to go through those same things, and those are the relationships there. You asked me another question, but I can't remember what you just asked me about.
I was trying to show the actual crown with the bird on it.
One of his crowns, but there's a bird. You can see it, the yellow one at the top. But that's not the one I was talking about either.
Okay, but it does have like that pointed, that kind of womb like type of look to it. I'm trying to find what you're speaking of. Let me see.
It's going. I don't think let's see. He just took pictures with it recently. It's not down there. Scroll up. I don't think he scroll up. It's not down there. Nope, that's scrolling down.
Up.
Yeah. He shared the picture, I think, when he was for his birthday recently. So I don't think it's there. Right here. At the top, this black and white one at the corner.
Oh, right here. Wow.
You can see it right there. So
wow, that's a crown right there. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is a crown.
That's almost like the same crown that they have for the Osea crown, but
so that is like an Egyptian, like they actually had that in Egypt, the same type of pointed crown.
Yep.
So all that stuff comes from Egypt. A lot of stuff come from Egypt and over to Nigeria.
Well, I don't know if they come from, or if what I understand about these mysteries is that many of them are continental wide. The assumption is always, because we can track them in ancient Egypt, that they came in Egypt first. That's not necessarily the case, although there were migrations. As I said, there were migration trade routes from the Nile to Niger trade routes. and so on. And under many, many invasions of ancient Egypt, many of those priests and many of those people migrated west to West Africa. So there, and some migrated south, and so on and so forth. They did not just stay there and adapt over many, you had many, many invasions over time. You had the Hyksos, the Asians that came in, and then you had the Romans that came in, and then you had the Greeks that came in, and over time, each one with their own regimes and so on. So many of them migrated. So you will see much of the same imagery in different forms, just what it looks like 3,000 years later.
Did you have a question, Apostle? So I wanted to ask, we talked about the feminine justice, the form of feminine justice with when social or spiritual balance has been violated. Did we talk about that?
When social and feminine, say that one more time.
So do Iyami represent a form of feminine justice when social or spiritual balance has been violated?
Yes, but not, yes. Because they're feminine, it's feminine, but it's not just feminine justice. Justice is justice. You will look at, even within the United States, justice is supposed to be blind. Justice is often represented, the Statue of Liberty and so on, is represented by energies and icons that are associated with feminine energy, right? But it is not, I'm troubled by saying it's just feminine justice, because I don't want to limit it as just a feminine thing, even though it is feminine energy that is implementing it. It is also balanced, because these feminine energies, the feminine energy rules this world, this physical world. So because of that, they have control over that. And so when my husband brought in this is the Shango one. This is the Shango, the one on our Shango shrine. So this is one of the crowns, the Ades. He just brought it in. He heard me talking about it.
Oh wow, with the bird on
Here
top.
are the birds.
Actual physical bird.
Yeah,
Of the birds.
this is the same shape as the Osir one, right?
And so bird is a feminine thing. It's
This
a
represents
feminine.
Iyami. The birds represent Iyami on the crown. Absolutely.
Growing up as a little girl, my mother and my grandmother used to always tell us the birds will tell you everything. They are closest to God. And we, even to this day, I taught my daughter, we can tell their omens, they especially with owls. Where I live, there are all kinds of birds. Like if an owl is close to the house, or if you hear an owl or see an owl, she would translate it for us and tell us what it is. And then she would also call the trees. I know there's male and females on some trees, like mulberries have a male and a female, but she would call the trees sister trees. And then she'd say, listen to the wind. It's like going through their leaves. Can you speak a little bit more about that? I loved listening to you. So
yeah, absolutely. The trees are also connected. The birds are connected. If you understand the earth is really a world wide web. It's a network, right? And those trees, the roots of trees are connected all over the place. So when there's a message, right, those trees, you might see one tree in the community, or you'll see 10 trees, but it's really one tree, right? There's a mother tree in all major communities and so on, in some form or another. Trees have consciousness. They have life. They are, they can communicate. Birds sit on trees, so birds become also a part of that network. And as a part of that network, they communicate and take messages as well. So for instance, even if there is a network, let's just say someone goes and I should be saying this because say someone prays near a tree, right? And that tree is hearing and understands the message, and there's the prayer. And then there's a bird that's sitting on that tree, and that bird is able to take the message. That tree can work through its network and communicate with other trees nearby and far and wide. And where that tree can't connect, that bird can also take those messages to other trees and communicate. There's a whole network of life and energy in our environment that we are totally unaware of, completely unaware of. So she was absolutely on point. In ancient women's societies, they spoke like birds. There were certain, you know, understanding the messages, understanding what different twerks mean, all kinds of things. These are all symbols of ancient ancestral mothers and that feminine energy in some form or another. She was very. This was your grandma, you said?
My mom and my grandmother.
Yeah.
My mother still talks like that.
Alive?
My mother is still alive, and my grandmother has transitioned. She says things just to listen to you. It's all I envision that I'm being bathed in this truth. It's so like we're so thirsty for the voice of women that are wise and know these things. So I appreciate you giving this, putting this out in the ether, so to speak, because people are so disconnected to like I said, she calls it, I told my daughter, the sister trees. And to hear you say the mother tree, I got really emotional. So she's still out here.
Disconnected from our environments. That's why I say nature is very important. Connecting with nature. If you connect with nature, nature will give you the tools and it will give you the wisdom that you need. But we're very isolated and disconnected from nature right now. So your mom and your grandmother, they were passing on an ancient wisdom that's rarely passed on today. So if I were you, I would make sure that you talk to your mama every day and you get as much information as you can, because there's a lot of wisdom, there's a lot of medicine that she has that can help you and that you should take on, so that you can pass on, and you can use it in your own world, but you can pass it on to the next generation. Because what we have is a lot of women who they get this information and they dismiss it, or it's covered up by a whole bunch of other stuff. You focused on what somebody wrote 2,000 years ago and not what your mama told you in the kitchen. And that becomes your greater truth and so on. And as a result of that, you end up losing a part of yourself, which each generation we lose a part of that wisdom that our mothers had. And if we don't take time to reclaim it, to get as much of it as we can while they're still alive, it will be lost. It is a tragedy, right? Every time a grandmother crosses over, a whole library is completely gone.
Yes.
So
a lot of records.
I had the blessing of being able to take care of my grandmother for 5 years before she crossed over. And I got as much knowledge and wisdom as I could in that process. I really, really did, because I knew and I understood, once she's gone, who's going to be able to answer these questions?
Right.
So, we have to honor and respect that. Many of us don't get along with our mothers, and that's a challenge. But there are other insights that we have to get from them anyway. And it's up to us or nobody, or it's going to die.
Wow. Listening to, I would love to talk to you more. I'm sorry, I only got into the conversation halfway through, but listening to you, everything you're saying, it does take me back into my thoughts about my grandmother and my mother. I'm a doula and I have witnessed many births. So I think about too, how things have changed with birth, because my grandmother, not my mother, but my grandmother also was a doula. She didn't call herself a doula, but the home births and helping being the midwife was just secondhand. I want to mention to you about not just childbirth, but if we can talk about menstruation, because I wasn't taught as a child that childbirth was so horrible and painful, and menstruation is a curse. It was a different type of vibration with my family. And when you talked about those white head wraps, all I could think of was how in childbirth, the white sheet that was cut up and torn up, and also I don't know if you remember menstruation, there were the white sterile sheets. Do you remember? Like that to me is something spiritual. I don't know if I'm going too deep, but with my grandmother and my mom, they, not to get too, I know this is public, but the menstrual cycle was linked to the white pure sheets with my family. And if you could speak on something about that, or am I off base? Is it just something that's an anomaly?
No, it's
I don't think
actually not. It brings me back to something, because on one hand, that white pure sheet, it represents it being clean and it's more hygienic. And you don't have to guess if it's clean. But on
Right.
the other hand, it reminded me of years ago, I had a series of dreams, and I've always been able to ask a question of the celestial powers and have them show me certain things in their dream. And one of the things, when I was just getting to know Iyami, I said, "Who are you? Y'all tell me." And in one of those dreams, in fact, several times, because I would say, "Tell me, keep coming until I can get it." But in one of those dreams, I was in a sorority house full of women, and they all had on white, and everybody had on, they had a blood on their bottoms, right?
Oh, wow. Oh, my
know
goodness.
the terror that many women we have, like in junior high and high school, to be on our menstrual cycles, and we have on all white and have the nerve to have blood bleed through. In this particular dream, everybody had white skirts, but they had a little bit of red on them, right? And that was the menstrual cycle. That was the power of the menstrual cycle. The menses are, as I said, this is ancestral blood. This is from the womb. Each one of us, have that in some form or another, and that's a part of the mysteries. I won't get deeper into that. But there's absolutely something to be said about that. That is why that particular thing, I'll say this in terms of the menstrual blood, when you see the red tail feathers, so you'll see people initiate, they get the red tail feather on their foreheads and otherwise, that represents the menstrual blood. It is from an African gray parrot. And within the African gray parrot, it's all gray or whitish and gray, but they have these red tail feathers, and that red tail feather is directly connected to the menstrual cycle. So it is symbolic that when you see it in the Vedic traditions and women have the red, they'll say it's connected to being married, but it is also, again, it's a symbol because it was a consecration in women's societies with menstrual blood to the forehead. There's some very powerful energy that's there. I don't want to really discuss it because misused and in an uncontrolled mind, it can be dangerous to themselves and others. But you're onto something.
And we're on the same brain wave. It's something, when you talked about the mystery, there are things we as women, we need to still protect with the veil. And I just absolutely love you. You are outstanding with your information. So
I was actually showing a person, my godmother in her Ifa initiation. As you can see, she's coming out of the initiation. Her hair is shaved. You have like the
she got
beautiful.
Yeah, so she's coming. She's now Ifa priest with her. She has that feather. Yes. In the center of her head, which is pointing at her head, and that feather. Yes. So, I mean, you can explain it further. I don't know what that means.
No, I'm not. I've probably said too much.
Right.
Oh my goodness!
It's not totally secret. It's stuff that people, if you do enough research, you learn it and you know what it is. But it's just that there are no mysteries, and I will say this in terms of biblical mysteries: there are no ancient mysteries or mystery brotherhoods or sisterhoods that don't honor the feminine. It's just that she is secret, she is mystery, and so on. You talked about an audience that is very biblically oriented. I'm going to break down some of the divine feminine in the Bible that people don't realize, right? The divine feminine in the Bible and how that shows up is in, let's talk about the tribes, the sons, right? The sons of Israel, the sons and the tribes of Israel, and so on. Everybody talks about the males, but they don't talk about Dinah, the daughter, right? She's the 13th one. So in this particular thing, 13 is a big deal when it comes to representing the feminine. In many ways, it represents a form of transformation, and so on. But Dinah represents where's Dinah, right? Dinah represents that feminine energy. When it comes to Solomon had 12 advisors, but there was a 13th, and that was the Queen of Sheba. That was the divine feminine. These are the mysteries that are written into the Bible. Is not a book of just direct instruction from God. It is a mystery book, and if you understand how to read it, it's not just literal. There are mysteries within that book that teach you something bigger and greater than what is readily apparent just from reading it. When you look at even the New Testament Jesus, and you look at the 12 disciples, but there was also Mary the Magdalene, right? That was another aspect of the feminine. You will see certain things mirrored out throughout the Bible, because these become universal mysteries that you can find in every single tradition, but you can also find it in nature, right? If we get, I don't want to get deep. There might be a different conversation, but there's a lot of that feminine energy that is very much in the Bible. You just don't know where it is or how to find it, and because most people don't read it, and they research it within a certain context, right? And because they only research it in a certain context, they only find certain things. But if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you'll see 10 times more than what is readily apparent and what is readily taught in that particular in that book. There's a lot of feminine energy that is there.
Well, I love that you said that, Chief Dr. Ayele Kumari, because I actually teach the esoteric of the Bible and the divine feminine in the Bible. And they don't like that I break down the name Eve is not much different than the name Yahweh, which is the name of the God that they took on to worship. It's just one jot, one tittle that's added to the name Eve to make the name Yahweh or Yahweh. And so they both mean to be and to exist in this realm. And so who said in the Bible, not one jot or tittle will be removed from this word? That was Christ. And so the yod was added to the name Eve to make their actual deity Yahweh. So I have some stuff to talk to you about.
Absolutely, because a lot of those things, if you go down into biblical history and so on, then you begin to look at, well, what did the Canaanites, where did this stuff come from, right? By the time anything was written down, at least 6,000 to 10,000 years had already passed, right?
Yeah,
so
true.
So you have to look at, the time period in which something was finally written and interpreted and so on. It was already oral history. Right. And
Yes.
that oral history has its own nuances and so on and so forth. But if you look at those early things, I don't know much about Eve. I know where she came from because I study goodness gracious, Sumerians, and where the Sumerians and the Canaanites and so on and so forth, and their worship, and Babylonia and prior to that. And so all the way back to Tiamat. And many of the ancient ones that came before. It's like we look at these things as if they are universal truths, and we don't realize maybe there was a much bigger story. By the time it got written down, it was already limited. Second, we have a tendency to interpret these things only through Western languages, and not realizing that there's a whole other language and an esoteric language with esoteric meanings behind many of those things. Let's take the Holy Spirit, for instance. When you hear the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, most people don't know that the Holy Spirit is the Shekinah and this feminine energy. It's the rock. It represents the rock.
That's so right.
Again, she's the mystery. She's the one that you don't see, right? All of those things go into understanding those things, the Eloah and Elohim, that's plural. Understand, male and female. They created he and them. that is not something that people like to recognize. These are all pieces of how the divine feminine shows up. Some of the earlier versions, they don't know that before there was Eve, there was Lilith. And there was a whole other thing that went with Lilith, and she's been demonized. That's one of the things that you will find as a trait of many patriarchal systems. I'm not talking about males. I'm saying patriarchal systems tend to demonize women and powerful women. And they make them in a way that is based on fear and suppression and so on. And you have to ask yourself, you know, why is that? Because if women actually own their power, then you couldn't control them, right? Because all systems of power are dependent on controlling somebody else, or at least all systems of power, right?
Yeah.
Systems and regimes. So you have to recognize, are you the controlled or are you the controller, right? And in order to do that, that's how you manipulate things. In this society, we see how power dynamics show up. But, you know, like I said, in those biblical stories, they're much older. They're much more ancient. Most of what we know right now, it was written very recent. There's nothing literally original in the Hebrew language. Those books came out of the earliest writings of the Septuagint, right? Many of the Septuagint, there's 3 versions of the Bible: the Septuagint, the Vulgate, and the Peshitta. And all 3 of those are variations, but none of them are written in the Torah. There is no original Torah text. There are only copies that were written later on that came out of Egypt. So,
yes, out of the Qumran scrolls. You're talking the truth.
Yeah, a lot of those old stories, you have to go back, because humanity is bigger than 6,000 years old.
Yes.
We can
And
prove it.
Doctor, and in the Peshitta, it's written that Christ says, "My mother, the Holy Spirit, took me by my hair." So it says in the Peshitta, it says that. So it's amazing that you breaking this down. Thank you.
Absolutely. All of those things, you know, they tie to more ancient traditions. And that's the thing. Once you understand, I'm a student of global world history, but especially indigenous and African, across the continent of Africa, and how it shows up in the Americas and so on. From the names, the esoteric mysteries, the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life, those sciences, I've studied it all because it's been my life's work. So right now I am more in the West African. That's what my journey has taken me through. But as a student of the science, the spiritual sciences, and it goes all the way back. So I was always that kid. Even, and I hear what you're saying. I want to know where it came from, and where did that come from, and how did that come to be like that? And if you look and you unpack that, I wanted to unpeel the onion. And by unpeeling the onion, that's how you get to the truth. By studying various perspectives, that's how you find what is universal among all of them. And so for me, the mission is learning what is the universal truth. That's why I went back to nature in the end, because the one thing that's consistent before, right now, and will be after is how nature works, how nature shows up, and how the rhythm and the cycles of life show up in such a way that it gives us clues about who we are, our existence, where we're going, what we need to be doing, what we don't need to be doing, and how to evolve.
You know,
okay, go ahead.
I was going to ask, so it's interesting when you talk about Iyami, and even like when you talk about everything, you talk about the Bible, right? There was these things called the vestal virgins, but they were also considered to be witches. Iyami is also labeled to be witches. Why are Iyami so frequently described as witches? Is translating Iyami as witches culturally inaccurate or spiritually misleading? And then I want to because when I want to get into the story that you told about even how when you talk about the Sibyls, and how they had this knowledge, but then they were suppressed in a certain way and all that stuff. So I want to get into that.
You don't have to remind me because my menopause will kick in. I'll remember all of that. But what I can start off is with the witches.
The menopause crew is in the house.
Honey,
y'all.
listen, we all going. I'm Perry. So.
Yes, I'm perimenopausal.
all day long. But let me start with the idea of witches, right? And let me start with what is a witch, right? What is a witch? A witch is a woman of power. The word witch comes from Waje. It comes from Waje, and Wu is Waje, and Waje in ancient Kemet, it was spelled with a T, the Wajet, right? Again, I'm going back to where words came from and so on. So that was set in ancient Kemet, those words and how they evolved, and they became women of power and so on. And then what do we have? What happened to the witches is that we had the Catholic Church, who perceived them as a threat because they worshiped the great mothers and the honors and so on. And then they had the witch burnings. And so then witches became associated with evil in Europe, right? The idea of the witch, they became associated with Europe. Now, simultaneously, what was also happening? You had missionaries going to Africa. When you had missionaries going to Africa, they were bringing their religion and they were projecting it onto the indigenous people of Africa. And so they too associated, okay, there is a women of power. In Africa, you had women who owned land. They had a lot of economic power because they owned the marketplace. They governed the marketplace and they had a relationship to the land. And between the land and the marketplace, they had the economy wrapped up for the most part. Right, men were the hunters for the in many of those areas. So when you have a regime coming in, and we're coming in to take control here, we got to assess who is in power. It is the women in power. They're in charge of the marketplace. They're in charge of the earth because they gather the herbs and the relationship. Remember, Iyami is also tied to Mother Earth, and so on and so forth. So you have these dynamics that are there, and as a part of those dynamics, you're also bringing in your religion. So fast forward 400 or 500 years later, how they're associating, okay, any woman of power is a witch, right? So it became in such a way that if they accused you of being a witch, oh, that was to be afraid. That was to be frightening, right? And they've even reinterpreted what that meant to be something evil or someone doing something to you in a negative way, witchcraft or otherwise. But if we go back to the original origins of it, it wasn't that. Now, that being said, because of that, they tend to not associate witches with Iyami, even though they're translated to. Now, both represent women and the feminine energy of power. I don't have a personal issue with the word witch or otherwise, but many people do. So I honor and I respect that. I just don't, because I understand the history going all the way back. But many do, and they associated that. And again, the way that you begin to control people is through fear. And it's fear that they're really dealing with. It's fear that, fear of the unknown, fear that someone may overpower you and have more power over you. And fear will motivate people and help you fear will motivate people. So one of the ways that you begin to control people is you tag a label onto it. And remember, tag the label, and give the label the definition, and now you can control people, right? They do that now. The administration we're under now, they label somebody a certain thing, and if they label you a criminal, then you must be a criminal because that's what they said that you were. And they begin to frame who you are, right? It's not who you define yourself to be. It's who someone else defined you to be, and they lived through that, and that became the truth, right, that people understood and that they live by and so on. But essentially it boiled down to power. So you have now societies who have now been fully and effectively colonized. And don't think for 1 minute that colonization has not influenced even the indigenous traditions, because it has. Just a few, 10 years ago, you couldn't even say Iyami. You literally couldn't, you could only whisper it, because people were so afraid, right? 10 years ago, you could not say it. 10 years ago, I did a whole course, a 40-hour, 40-plus course on women's mysteries, East and West. And within that particular course, and it was to address the ancient mysteries of the African feminine energy and so on, because there was so much fear that was embedded in it. So much fear, so much fear women had of themselves, of their mothers, of how they saw themselves. Anytime someone teaches you to be afraid and to think negatively about your own self, they're controlling you, and they're controlling the narrative, and they are controlling your narrative, not for your benefit, but for theirs.
Yes, I love it.
To go out and seek out who we are, who we were, what we have, how to use it, how to manage it, and how to make it how to bring it in such a way that we can empower ourselves, we can elevate ourselves, we can heal ourselves, and we can move forward.
Yes, I love how you say that. That's beautiful. When you talk about being afraid and what they told us about ourselves, I'm telling you, while you're talking, so much is going on in my mind when I listen to you, because when you say afraid of ourselves, they want us to not know the power of our biology as women, the power that we talked about menopause, but then everything in society is like, oh, childbirth, oh, it's such a curse, oh, menstrual cycle, such a curse, oh, menopause, such a curse. I want to ask you to talk to us about the divine connection of these stages of the maiden, the mother, and the crone. Talk to us about that divine connection and that femininity of our own biology, if you could do that.
Absolutely. And there's a few more. I speak about this in the course, in one of the courses. It goes under the title The Blood Mysteries, right?
Yeah.
And the blood mysteries begin with a woman is a biological clock, and each shift and transition that she goes through is understood through the blood of some sort, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
blood becomes ancestral. Blood is very much tied. So the first thing is that you're born through the woman, through a mother, and she's bleeding out, right? She's giving birth.
Yes.
Your next transition is your rite of passage when you enter into quote unquote biological womanhood by starting a menstrual cycle. That is the first blood, right? That opens you up to the ability to be a mother and so on and so forth. That's your first transition. It is biological. This is why womanhood can never be a political posture or an identity fully. And I know that that's going to offend some people. It's not intended to. It's that our very bodies tell us who we are and how we manifest that, right? So the body itself, it starts with a menstrual cycle. That's the first blood, or the second, depending on if you deal with birth. The next one, it used to be marriage, but marriage is marked by what used to be marriage, but it's really the first time you have sex, right?
Your hymen, yes.
Your hymen is broken. That's the second. That's the next blood. There is a blood manifestation that the veil that covered your womb has now been pierced. That's why women are associated again with the veils. It's that veil has been pierced. There is blood. There is life. The third one is when you actually give birth, right? So once you give birth, now that is another blood right. These are all biological blood rights of womanhood. So
yes, it is.
The next part of that. The final one that happens is the ceasing of blood, and then the blood energy becomes internalized. So through internalization, that now you have a lot of internal power that has developed. That's why the elder women tend to be associated with more power than some of the younger. Each one has its own power. Each one has its own ashe, right? But the elder, now the blood is internal, and so elder women are both the biggest power, but also to patriarchal societies, the biggest threat.
Oh, you are the truth of, you're an oracle. I had to stop and say this. No, you are an oracle. I bow to you because you are talking so much truth. I'm getting emotional. Go ahead. I had to say that one more time about the crone, about the elder. What's going on with the society? And I'll mute out and let you flow. Please, no pun intended.
that's the ceasing. The blood is internalized. So all the ashe that came from the menstrual cycle and so on, and it's released every month. Now it's all internalized. And so that internalization is like a cultivation, kind of like wine within oneself. And that becomes that's how your power builds, and so on and so forth. That's why when we talked about the elder women praying over you in the church, why they had more power, it's because of that. That ashe is internalized now. And because of that, they are more powerful, but they also are more threatening to people, to any other system of power. And so you have societies that want to dismiss women. They want to put her over to the side. They want to call her crazy. They use labels to mitigate how they deal with her and to control and manage her image and so on. So a lot of the elder mothers don't get, people dismiss it. Oh, it's the old lady and so on and so forth. And those old ladies are the ones that are more
Don't forget
powerful.
hag.
The
They call
hag,
it a
right,
hag.
the
Yeah.
hag. And they also defined womanhood as someone who is young and beautiful and so on and so forth, because that person you can control a little bit better than a woman who's seen some stuff. The woman who has seen some stuff is like, baby, you know, you see somebody, you see a couple and a little young girl, bless her heart, and she's with this guy, and you can see that, oh no, he is not that one, but she can't see that. Right.
And they try to turn us against each other. They want to turn the young woman, the maiden, and the mother against the elder woman. They do that in society as a design, correct?
They do that as a society, but I'm going to tell you one thing as well. We've done it to ourselves as well. We've done it to ourselves as well, because many of the ancient traditions and the ancient mysteries and so on, they became extinct because the women were set upon themselves, the younger women versus the older women.
Can you tell that story of the Sibyls and how the women, the younger women with their husbands, they actually led to their own demise in.
Well, those are right. Those are two different stories. But I will say,
and is this, excuse me, doctor, is this about civil war amongst the women?
Yes and no. But let me just give you a brief. So in ancient societies, women had women's societies, right? Women's egg bays, and they held certain power councils and so on, in which their mysteries were taught. That's who took you through your rites of passage, whether it was eldership rites of passage or younger rites of passage, youth rites of passage. The elder women were the authorities within those societies. And so what you had are certain plans that were implemented by men, and many of them were implemented through missionaries, infiltrating their societies by getting the younger men who were married to the younger women to secure the secrets. So you would have those men who would say, hey, baby, if you tell me your secrets and we can both be powerful, we can rule the world, right? And so you have these missions of the younger ones. The older women knew, nah, baby, you ain't getting none of this information. But the younger women, wanting their own power, they dismissed a lot of the younger women. And they dismissed a lot of the older women, thinking, oh, you old fashioned, oh, you this or whatever. But they also had their own mission. So a lot of them, there was disputes sometimes between the older women and the younger women, because the younger women wanted to get their wings earlier, and the older women was like, maybe in time it's all going to happen, and so on. So there's those dynamics. But what happened was, once the younger women started getting some of those mysteries and so on, they would tell their husbands, and their husbands would then tell the male councils, and the male councils would then take those mysteries, and even to this day they still have some of those mysteries, but they would take those mysteries and then they turned them against the women. So then once they had those mysteries, there were new laws that were implemented. They implemented new laws that you cannot practice your own tradition, that you cannot do certain things, that if you do, you will be beheaded, you will be killed. Elder women became the threat. There's I'm trying to remember, in the Abibio Society, there are documents that are books that were written and documented as to what happened. And it happened all over Africa. in many different societies, right? The Kikuyu had theirs. There were in West Africa, they had theirs. Each one had different, and they represented different things. For the Kikuyu, all of the women's menstrual cycles were synchronized. So they began, when they tried to take over the women's societies, they waited till the women were pregnant, because those women were warriors. And so they would fight. The Kikuyu women would. And they waited until they were all pregnant, and they began to do their attacks that way when the women were pregnant and they were at their most vulnerable time. So there's a lot of things that went into that. And so I will say that to say that, when you're united, no one can separate you. The crack had to start from within, and it did. So we have to know that the crack started within. So that means that in order to repair it, it's got to start with us, and it's got to start with us coming together and so on. Now, as it relates to the Sibyls, because you brought up the Sibyls, the Oracle of Delphi, and so on and so forth, all of those North African prophetess types of things, those were all also aspects of Iyami. And there were priesthoods that were associated with both the birds and the serpents. Remember, I said the snakes and so on are connected in those ways. And so many of those mysteries have traveled also to West Africa. They show up in different ways. But there has been a struggle between the feminine and the masculine, probably for about 2,000, at least 2,000 to 3,000 years. Because prior to that, many of the societies were goddess societies. They were mother societies. And then there was a shift that happened. And when that shift happened, it came slowly but surely, and it came across the planet. And part of it did have to do with planetary energies, and that there's a shift between the masculine, what we would call the masculine and feminine. But that shift is also over. That's why women are coming back into power now. There's this dynamic that happens through the cycles in the universe and so on that are tied to that. But all of those are connected together. Someone else offered, because there was something else we were supposed to mention, and I don't know how much time we got left because we've been on this for a while now. Aburu, Aboye, Aboshishe.
Yeah,
I don't know if you still
I
wanted
want to
that.
show that. I want to show that real quick. And by the way, that story about what she just mentioned is in her book Iyanifa. Please support her book. But yes, the actual image that we use today, we were discussing that. I said, okay, Iboru, Ibuye, Iboshishe. And I, like, when I had used that image for the divine feminine that we did with the pa, like I only had a limited understanding of it, but I know that, Chief, you're gonna be able to break it down way more. But yes, these three women, Iboru, Ibuye, Iboshishe, Abaru, Abuye, Aboshishe, these are the three women. And yes, please describe what actually that story. I think you said it was Ogun Meji or
Ogunda Meji. So
Ogunda Meji.
Aburo Boye Aboshishe is a greeting that you greet when you greet a Babalawo or an Iyanifa, and or someone who is a Ifa priest. That is a traditional greeting. And most people don't know. Many people will interpret it as the offering has been made and the offering has been accepted. But it actually comes from a story in one of the Odus called Ogunda Meji. And that particular story has to do with Oromila, who was the prophet who wanted to have a conversation and communicate with Olodumare. And there were three women, three Iyami, that guarded Olodumare, Olodumare being the Most High, right? And so in trying to connect with Olodumare, he had to go through these women, and because he had to do that, he had to also pass their test and so on. So they gave him test to overcome. Oromila was a wise one and was able to, but part of that meant that he had to undergo trials, and he had to undergo figuring out some things, and part of that had to do with what Aburu, Aboye, and Aboshishe represented. He had to give them offerings. And those were the names. Aburu is a name. Aboye is a name. Aboshishe is a name of these different aspects of feminine powers that protect Olodumare. Some stories will say that he eventually married them and they became his wives. And as a result, you have to greet him. You have to greet his wives before you greet him. Aburu Boyebo Shishe. So there are different interpretations, and there are different translations that will show up. But Aburu, Abo, remember I said Abo and Ako, Aburu, that they all begin with Abo in that regard. They represent the feminine energy. So it is a literal acknowledgement of the feminine energy. In the Aboye is Aboye. And Aboshishe is Abosise. So anyway, those are the feminine energies. They are said to protect Olodumare or guard Olodumare. They are said to also sometimes be the wives of. Well, yeah, just don't worry about spelling it right now. In I will say this in Cuba in the diaspora, they often use I, and so they will say I. Yeah, there you go. They will say Iburu and with an I and so on. But essentially, that's the bottom line. That's what it represents. So it's an affirmation, and that's why he had to give them these offerings in order to connect with Olodumare, and and they accepted those offerings, and that's why it's translated as such.
Can an uninitiated person honor the divine feminine without entering restricted practices?
Sure. It just depends on, I mean, if you're a woman, why can't you? Now, what you do, what you know, what you have exposure to, and otherwise, that's...
Right. And so why shouldn't rituals or offerings associated with Iyami be copied from social media?
Because you don't know what the hell you're doing, and you don't even know if it's true. Right? The biggest thing that I wish people would understand is critical thinking and common damn sense, to be honest with you. They're gifts. They are essential gifts, critical thinking and common sense. Listen, just because somebody write it, let me say this across the board, because just because it's written doesn't make it true, doesn't make it accurate. Lies can be written. People can make it up. You don't even know. Many people have mental illness and they write stuff and they say stuff. People don't even know, baby, that person is batty, is crazy. That person has a mental illness. They don't even know. But you don't know that. So if you're following stuff that's just on the internet, you need to follow something by elders that have had some experience with it, right? Because you can get yourself into a lot of trouble calling down stuff you don't know nothing about.
That's right.
You can get yourself, baby, you can get yourself in a mess of trouble calling stuff you don't know, you don't understand. And usually it's your own ego that's making you want to do that. So the very fact that you haven't learned to subjugate to subject your ego to a little self-restraint by itself should tell you, I don't need to be doing this, right? Because it's the ego, it's the search for power, it's the being nosy and you haven't laid the foundation yet. It's the impatience, your inability to get along with someone or at least get along with an elder who can teach you. Because now you think you know it all. Now you think you know better. Now and it's a fuck around and find out type of moment, to be honest.
I know that's right.
It really is. Yes, you can honor them. You can give offerings. You can take them to a full moon and you can give offerings at the tree and so on and so forth. But don't assume you know, and it's just unwise. It's just unwise to try. It's like this, and I use this a lot. If someone wanted to learn how to drive, right? You can read what you want to read. You can look on YouTube. You can ride in a car for years. Does that teach you how to drive?
Nope.
You won't know how to drive until you get behind that wheel.
You can play video games thinking you know how to drive.
You can play video games thinking you know how to drive, and you don't know how to drive. And when you do finally want to learn, you need somebody next to you who knows how to drive.
Yes, that's right.
Who can help you. So that's the same thing. There's not much different. Your YouTube, it may or may not work.
Right.
Because you don't know. And the whole key is you don't know. So it's helpful to find those. Now, I will say this. I know that it's hard. It's hard to find people who will teach you. It's hard to find people who will show you. And I, for one, having I do have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience with a lot of things. Those of us who have been around and may know some things are also very picky and very selective in who we talk to about it and share with, right?
Yeah.
And because of character issues. Character is the inability to have self-control, self-restraint, your own mind, the ego, and all of that stuff. Who wants to deal with all of that? I'm not going to argue with you. I'm going to let you do you. But so that a lot of elders do hold back until you show that, hey, I am in this. It's not enough to say it. You have to show it through your actions, through your behavior, through your character over time. And because that's how I ended up getting it.
So that's when we talk about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When you talk about initiates and the selected that have been chosen, and these people start saying secret societies as if it's something negative, that's where it's something positive, right? You choose your student, you choose the initiate.
It's a protection. These are, you don't just share fire, like the learning how to use fire, for instance, right? Fire can be very, very helpful. It can cook our things. It can warm our houses. It can burn the whole damn village down.
Yeah.
Right? So it is a protection. You don't teach a child of 2 or 3 on how to start a fire.
Right.
They're not mature enough. They're not mature enough to handle it, to know what to do if there's a problem, to how to manage it. They're not mature enough. And maturity, while you can recognize it in the physical as a child, right? But spiritual maturity, you can be 50 and still be a spiritual child. You can still be immature. So maturity doesn't equal age. It should, but it doesn't always.
We have talked so much, man. We have covered the gambit. This has been a beautiful show. But I did want to cover one last final thing when it comes to Iyami about because this is a very a topic, I want to just for those people, when it comes to some things like, sexual abuse, physical abuse, where does the Iyami come into play with a lot of when it comes to exploitation, trafficking, violence against women? Where does the Iyami stand with a lot of this thing? What teachings of Iyami reveal about the condition of women today?
I'm trying to figure out how to put that in a small summary in that regard. I will say this in general, that of course the abuse of women in general is not valued, nor is it appreciated, nor is it supported. Right? It absolutely is not. You create a certain level of spiritual debt that can carry on into other lifetimes. But the same thing also applies to any abuse of power and so on. When it comes to the things that we experience right now as a soul, when it comes to things that we experience as a soul, we have to understand that it transcends just our individual lives, right? It goes into past lives, it goes into pre-birth plans, and so on and so forth. There are lessons that come with these truths, these understandings, and so on and so forth. But in general, when it comes to Iyami, they don't support it. Of course, they don't support abuse. But a lot of times, those that do abuse women, they suffer in other ways, right? They suffer in different ways. Sometimes it can appear that they got away with it and they didn't get away with it. They're just not going to suffer in the same way. Some, they could, lose their minds, right? Some, they can lose their wealth. Some, they usually when a Iyami is addressing something, again, on one hand, how it gets addressed could change, could last lifetimes. But also within a small period of time, how it can be addressed is loss of something, loss of your mind, loss of your money, loss of your family, you know, some form or another, when there's some violation that has happened, it often shows up as a block in some way. But they're not necessarily, it's not always immediate. You have to sometimes see it through over time. Some of the stories that we have about how justice has shown up is justice didn't stop in one lifetime. You have people who have inherited generational and ancestral debts and debts from past lifetimes, and they're experiencing these things now. So there's a lot of deeper things that play into why we might experience it and how that justice might show up. It's not just one dimensional in that regard.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, one day we'll talk. In the course that I talk about, it talks about the mysteries of the veils and how the ancient mothers in different traditions and how they show up with the ancient mothers, and how we have issues of rape and molestation and sexual assault, and how that shows up and the repercussions of that, and so on and so forth. There are whole stories. There are whole ancient priesthoods that are built on these stories and these narratives that are at least thousands, tens of thousands of years old. So there's layers. It's layers. It's hard for me to say one thing.
We're not going to cover Iyami in one
We're not going to
live stream. We're going to have to do a whole series about Iyami, because I had to skip through, because we haven't even covered. We haven't even.
You had 37 questions.
We haven't scratched the surface when it comes to Iyami and the energy that is actually existing right now with Osa Meji. We didn't even break down Osa Meji down to the core.
Well,
there's a lot.
There's a lot that's there. You know, I will say this: Iyami is not just Osa Meji is not just Iyami. Osa Meji is transformation. It shifts. It's change. It's the winds of change. It is the feminine energy, but it is also the water energy. It is also things that happen as a result of the water. It is winds. It can represent death. It can represent complete changes of regimes in some ways or another. It, you know, for what it fundamentally means is never underestimate any woman. That's one. But also for men, and I always say that because it's always a balance, is that it is important for men to tap into their inner feminine side, not as a way to emasculate them, but as a way to tap into. It's only through learning calm, learning inner peace, learning self-restraint in that regard, that they can become balanced, right? It's only in aligning yourself with that which you came from, your own mother, that you can find some balance. Your own mother, but not just your mother, your wife, your daughters, your sisters. You will find out, you know, it's interesting. A lot of men who might have been abusive to women or might have done women wrong, they end up finally having children. They have all girls.
Man, listen, you wonder why these dudes have an all-girl babies.
They have all girls.
It's a lesson. Oh, wow, that's crazy.
Wow. I would like to, you're leaving, and I hate to see you go, but I know your time is valuable. I would like to say, because the climate out here about these gender wars, I want to give this to you and let you expound on it. Men were given the gift of brawn. They're stronger. We could see their bodies are bigger in general. You know, they have more strength. Why do they fight against us having our strength, which I heard you say earlier, our spiritual strength? You say the men go out and fight, and we fight within with the spirit and in another way. Why is it so hard? And I'm talking about the men who are calling themselves, you know, imams and spiritual leaders. Why is it so hard for them to just realize we were given a spiritual strength as women, and let the whole world, men and women, realize that. Let the divine feminine come forward again. Will you talk to us about that? Them realizing that we do have that spiritual strength, please.
Well, I can't speak for a man because I'm not a man, But what I can speak for is how power shows up and insecurity, right? And that those who are in power or wish to be in power, often those who seek out power, seek to be called leaders, seek to be called. Some people, leadership is thrown unto them, right? And it's because it's their natural calling. Some people, they seek it out and they want to control it and they want to hold on to it as best they can. And that comes not from power, but from insecurity. So anytime, and this is based on even, my own relationship with my husband and so on and so forth, a man that is secure in himself will never feel threat from a woman asserting and being who she's supposed to be. A man who is secure in himself. But many are not secure in themselves. Some truly believe they are following God's law. But again, it's an interpretation, because if you actually look at it, then you will understand that that was just never the case, right? But again, many of them thirst for power. And we have within our own communities, right? Because there's power and then there's power. Within our own communities, particularly men of color, and they struggle with finding their power, true power, right, within. And some of it is because it is a derivative of captivity that came for hundreds of years. You have a certain level of confidence that many African-born continental men have, that a lot of men in America don't necessarily have. It doesn't mean they don't have it, but sometimes there is a different dynamic that is there. And at the same time, wherever they are in the world, those in power often want to stay in power. In order to do that, they have to keep someone else not in power. So they feel a threat. Men also, a lot of that energy, testosterone in and of itself is a naturally competitive type of energy. And so anytime you have a situation where that person is a competitor, they compete, they perceive any type of power as a competition, and then they want to dominate it so that they can assert power or dominance over it. So that's I can't speak to how do we. I can only say that the more that we are willing as women to stand in our own power and not fall for it, not in that way, and learn wisdom, the less control they have over it. The less control they have. And so, we have choice. You have choice whether or not you're going to fall in line in this particular path. You have choice if you're going to be with this particular man, whether he honors you or not. If that love that you have doesn't honor you, doesn't respect you, then is it really love, and is it really worth it?
Wow. You know what you just said, Dr. Kumari? We go, Genesis and I, sometimes I'm not doing it anymore, but I would go to some of these forums where men, it's called the manosphere, and men, they say so much misogyny, anything you can think about a woman. She's ugly, she's fat, she's old, she's a HOE, everything these men sit and do. And there are some women who are beautiful young women who will sit there silently and nod their heads yes, and just so they can get that kind of love and acceptance. But it's not what you just said. It's not really, you know what I mean? It's not love. They just want to be accepted by these men so badly that they will sit there and agree with all these terrible things that are said about women just to get some type of love and be called feminine.
Yeah,
So you really
having is insecurity, right? So we tend to mirror things in people, right? If you're insecure, you're likely going to get an insecure man. He's just going to hide it under the guise of masculinity, right? There's really a mirror there. It's an insecure. You're insecure about standing on your own. He's insecure. You're just dealing with your insecurities differently, right? So that person who wants to put someone down, who wants to bully someone, who wants to you know, whatever they want to do, that's coming from a place of insecurity. It's coming from a place of actual fear and even resentment. Many men who are in that zone, they're mad at their mama, they're angry at their mama, right?
I told you she's an oracle.
There's a lot of layers to that. You know,
Yes.
they resent their mother, or whatever the case is, where they saw it. And the mind is very complicated. People are not one dimensional. Genders or sex, they're not one dimensional. So there are many layers to it, but you will find misery loves company. Birds of a feather flock together. And so, you know, if you find a group of men, a couple of insecure men, they probably share some type of trauma bond of some type of issue with a woman. And they are feeding that energy. And until they understand it's toxic and it's undermining them. And because the mind can create things, the more resentment and the more you find to blame, the more issues you have. And then you find more people to blame on those issues rather than saying, you know what? I need to own my part. I need to be accountable. And I need to make the shifts in me in order to make my life differently and stop blaming everyone else, trying to control everyone else, trying to undermine everyone else because I'm not where I want to be.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And as far as the women, we're all here learning lessons. And sometimes you're going to be some of those lessons mean you'll be put in a situation where you're forced to stand up for yourself, where you're forced to be in a situation to know what love is and what love is not. And part of your lesson might be discernment, knowing what it is and what it's not. We fall in love often with what we hear. They say, the elder mothers used to say, women fall in love with what they hear. Men fall in love with what they see. Both are foolish.
Oh,
Both are silly.
Have you been called an oracle? Have you ever been called an oracle before? Because you are saying all truth. We are blessed to be here with you. Yeah, you're right. We've both of it is misleading, right? Fall in love with what you see and what you hear.
Yep.
That's not everything, is it?
Abused and she'll say, he say this, he say that, he say such and such, he said such and such. They're listening to what he says. That's why those brothers know how to mac. Back in the day, I don't know what they call it these days. We called it when they know how to mac. You're like, boy, he talking good. He talking nice and good, right?
He said a lot of stuff.
He said a whole lot of stuff, right? He sound like he knows what he's talking about. He don't know jack from nothing. It's just
No, or they say, excuse me, they say he talked me right out of my drawers.
Yeah. You gave your power away over some.
Yeah.
To be honest,
yeah.
And in the same way, because you can look at my husband was like, oh, there will never be a day I will fall for a big booty and a smile, because that's the quickest way. You know. Now in that regard, this is family stuff. You know, his father was killed because of a woman, and he set him up in that regard. So falling for women in terms of because of their beauty, because of their behinds, because of their physical features, is foolish. It's foolish. It's that every girl homie. It's not the girl that's always dressed up. Again, you're being misled. You don't have discernment because you're looking at what you see, and what you see has nothing to do with character. It has nothing to do with what's underneath. But you don't want to be. You want arm candy, but you don't really want a wise woman, because a wise woman is going to force you to also grow. Wise woman is going to elevate you. A wise woman is going to tell you, baby, I think you need to change this. This is going to help you better.
Or don't listen.
And if you're a wise man, then you'll go ahead and listen. It doesn't mean she can't listen to you. You can listen to both, because wisdom don't have to have a gender. It doesn't have to be a male or a female. If it's wisdom, it's wisdom. And
although in the Bible, it does say wisdom. It says wisdom is a she, but you're absolutely right. It's for all of us.
Because it's Shekinah, it's a feminine energy.
Yes. I
wish I had a explosion every time you say something.
I wanted to drop bombs, but I didn't want to mess, overstep your thing, Genesis.
I don't find no threat. This is how we share. This is how we share, and learn. I don't get out often.
Hold on, I'm gonna just do an explosion on everything. Boom.
We'll be dropping bombs all through her conversation.
You wouldn't even be done if I could hit an explosion every time you said something. Boom, it'd be just man.
I really enjoyed speaking with you. I would love to bring you back.
Audience.
We need you. We know you are the water. I mean it. You're the cleansing water. You're the water that quenches the thirst, because we must have more of this energy, which is divine feminine energy. Even though you're speaking, you balance. You're not against the man. You balance. You say it over and over. It's for all of us, but we still need that divine femininity to come and teach. So what I'm saying is, when are you going to come back? Because we need you back soon. We need you back. We really do.
I'm relatively available. I'm typically a recluse, but I'm around. So we're invited.
And listen,
Wow,
I'm gonna say this is that
And my husband is also, he will speak a lot of, he is also an advocate of the divine feminine as well. He's
that's
not one
beautiful.
of those guys that speak down. He's, like I said, he heard me upstairs talking and he wanted to come and help, and here you go.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Would he come on? Would you come on together? If we could bring you on together.
Together once before. I think we talked about marriage in one of your
Oh.
shows.
Yeah, I had a show on with them both on. Yeah, like they
Oh, you did? Genesis, you've been hiding her from me. What's wrong with you gatekeeping like this?
It's been on my show. You just have to watch it. You've been
They
watching
just
my
show.
Well, I would love to bring her over to the, to the
HOK?
platform, because we
Yeah,
have to.
HOK.
We need her to, and her husband, to bring in, and it's such a beautiful thing when a gentleman, when a man, a king comes in and says, yes, this
He's
is my
literally
wife.
a king. He's
with
literally
whom-
a king. He's like
Oh,
literally.
he is wonderful. I was going to do a Bible reference that I know that Dr. Kumari would catch. This is my wife with whom I am well pleased. Remember the transfiguration of Christ, where God. Well, I would love that. So definitely, I will talk to Genesis. It's a real pleasure. The pleasure is all mine to meet you and sit with you and bask in your knowledge. Thank you.
It's a pleasure to meet you as well. It was good to talk. There's so much to share. There's so much to unpack when it comes to the feminine, when it comes to spirituality. I'm available. I'm available. I don't get out often and I don't talk often, but I'm trying to do a little bit more now.
And you know what? I was trying to explain it that the community needs EFI, because EFI community has been separated so long, like they just kind of like are recluse, right? They are very in their own bubble and they don't really come out much to really talk about EFI. But I'm like, okay, this is the time now with the Osa and Otora. I believe that this is the time it needs to be out more, and I believe that that's even like the Osa Meji. That's why it came out, because people need to hear more from the EFI community about what they know, because there's so many misconceptions. They think that we're witchcraft. They think that we're evil, and we're just out here just
almighty voodoo.
Wow. You know what? You're right. You're right.
You know, we've gotten a really bad rap, our tradition, but the bottom line is that it's really the ancient tradition, that if people actually just do like the research, they'll find out so much more. And yes, I will I think that it'd be a great thing to bring. But let me also promote, okay,
yes,
her Ori Institute and the Iyami course for those women. If you want, I've been showing it the whole time. If you want to, she has an entire course where she talks about that she's done for like, I don't know how many years.
The course is actually 10 years old. Some of the information is old and some of it is outdated because I've grown. But it's two courses. So one is the East and the other is the West. So you can take them individually or you can take them as a course. But I unpack a lot of different ethnic groups, a lot of different women's mysteries, a lot of different divine feminine goddesses, if you will, Neteru or Orisha. There's just so much that there's just not enough time. And so this was done, like I said, it was done 10 years ago. And each class is probably at minimum 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so long. So it's a long, it's a lot of information. And it takes some time to get through. But There's the East, there's the West, and there's a lot to learn. You will learn. I'm probably going to turn this into some type of certification at some point because there's so much.
Yes, you're reading my mind. That's what you should do. That I'm interested in that course for sure. You cover all different. Do you say East West? It's not only African, right? It's all worldwide, or
nope, because it's East African and West African.
Oh, I got you. Okay, that's what I want to clarify.
South African and I did some North African, but we have a lot of European women have done a lot on the goddess and the divine feminine in Europe. And a lot of people have done African history from an African male's perspective. What we don't have is a lot, and this is what motivated this course. We don't have a lot, even to this day, speaking about African women's mysteries, and not just one. So this wasn't just about, like, Iyami is one of the titles, but Iyami by that name is within the Yoruba. But there are other feminine mysteries and feminine traditions. That's why I call it African women's mysteries, because it's the stuff we don't know. It's the stuff that's been a mystery. It's stuff that is a tradition. When I first had put this course out, I really limited who could even take it in the first place, because there are many people who will take your stuff and use it against you. And so we got people in the White House right now that took our own history, created Project 2025 to use it against us.
Yes.
So yeah, there's that. But in this particular case, now it is what it is. And you know, there are lessons, there are exercises that are there, but there's information we should just know, and it can empower us. It can be the springboard for a number of other things. But I tell people, if you're going to start with the East, ideally, because those are the more older ones that we know and we recognize, and they set up the understanding for the West. So within the East, we deal with the Kikuyu, we deal with some of Nubia, we deal with a lot of the different variations of the female Neteru and their origins and so on and so forth. We also move up to North Africa, to the Berbers, to those areas, because we miss a lot of those in those areas. And then the West, we deal with the Dagara, we deal with the Yoruba, we deal with Igbo, we deal with the Mami Watas and the Ewe and so on and so forth. We deal with a lot of different groups and areas of women's feminine mysteries. So there's just a lot there.
You know, I wanted to like say, because lately there's been like this new movement of that we're not from Africa, that we are from America, and so I wanted to like actually address the fact, because some people like, well, I'm not from Africa, I'm from America. We didn't have a slave trade. We didn't come from a slave. We were already here. And so they would probably look at this and be like, oh, well, why would I watch a thing about Africa? We're not connected to Africa, blah, 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 blah. So what would you say to that?
They don't have to look. I don't argue with people about what they believe about themselves. We are into identity politics right now, and people nowadays totally ignore facts for fantasies and feelings. And I am not that type of person. I'm going to look at the facts, not your feelings, not what you like or dislike. I'm a scientist in that way, right? So if you don't feel like it, that's fine. I'm not asking, I'm not begging, and it won't make me or break me if you watch it or if you don't. It really, really doesn't. Right. What I can say is that, I'll just leave it at that. It wouldn't matter to me. I don't argue with people over who I am, what I represent, what I say, or what I do. Believe what you want to believe, but you know, I'm not trying to convince anyone. Those who it's for will get it. Those who it's not, it will go completely over their head, and it's not right. For them. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with people not knowing some things because they don't always need to know.
I love it. You know,
there's a whole thing. When the student is ready, the teacher will come. It may not be their time.
Right. I love it. I love that. Yes, just move forward. And another thing is, if you don't resonate with it, don't stick around. Please go to the next room. Go forward. Don't stick around and criticize it and try to tear it down. Just move forward if it's not for you. I love that. Yes.
Yeah, I don't. I used to be into. I told her I used to do the debates and so on and so forth. And you get older and you like it for what? For what? You know,
I love
you don't,
debating.
you don't pay not one bill. You know, you don't affirm me. You don't. Why should I care? You know, if you want to know, I'm here to share my own experience from what my studies and what my research and what my understanding has shown. That's all it is. You know, at this point, I know that my ancestors, they were African. I did have some that identify with the Native Americans, some that are in the Dawes Roads,
Yes.
but it was maybe 1 or 2%. But I have 80% that have direct West African DNA ancestry,
African.
and I will not deny that. I won't also deny those that were here. I won't make up stories. I won't, you know, I don't have any need to try to convince, because the truth is that my identity transcends my body and my human existence even in this moment. I am a direct being and all of that. This is a temporary vessel I am in. And
oh wow,
who I truly am
right.
transcends all of that. So I don't have a need to get into the identity politics in that way anymore.
So I wanted to like
so
just let people, man, this has been a great live. I want to let people know that in 20 minutes we're going to talk about the Kabbalah, and we're going to go into the Merkabah light, the hidden origins of Abraham, and also get into the Kabbalah on that level. And that's going to be on House of Consciousness, as well as Debate Coliseum and the Paz Rise, and we're gonna just do a whole thing. If you want to, I mean, I know you got things to do, Chief, but if you want to come up and say something,
I've been on 3 hours now. It's time
right,
to go.
right.
Three glorious.
Was it 2.5? Going up 3.
Almost three glorious hours of this. Was just like I said, this was a bath for a lot of our people in our community. They need to bathe in this. So thank you,
man. Listen, I appreciate you so much. I mean, Chief, you are awesome, Chief. I mean, please go to her. I've been summer jamming her websites. Please see her websites. Let me try to find it
real quickly. I don't mean to, because I it's in my mind. I want to ask a question. So it's a course that you can actually, it's a live course that you teach, or is it something you can purchase and then just do on your own? Because I want to know.
When the class 10 years ago. So it's recordings. So it's self-paced.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's self-paced recordings, and so on. I'm still kind of interactive, but there are assignments there, but I'm not really grading those assignments anymore. Not like that. But they are. There's a lot of information for your own edification.
Definitely checking into that.
I may start another series. It's just that my time is very, very limited, and I've got so many responsibilities that I just don't have time to do a lot of the updates and things of that nature, and I just don't have the energy.
You have like different. It's a whole entire institute. It's a whole entire.
The Ori Institute is one thing. That is our school. That is a school is for indigenous studies, women's studies, and so on. But we also have a temple, Ori Ashe Soul Global Village, which is the village that is our spiritual institution. My husband and I. As well. I'm an author, so I write, and I've got 3 books I'm trying to get out at the same time. I've got to train priests. We do initiations, and I've got priests to train. I've got clients to take care of. I've got almost to take care of. I am overwhelmed.
Are you in the United States? I'm
in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay, so there we have it. And your institute is there too. Your village.
Well, we're global, so we have online connections. We do online sessions, live sessions, and so on, where we unpack Odu Ifa, the wisdom of Ifa, because we're both priests. We are. I am an Ian Ifa, Ye Lawo. However, my husband is a Babalawo. We are priests in our tradition.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, we do quite a bit.
Well, thank you so much, Chief Ayele Kumari. What is Ayele mean?
Check out our music, our Orisha music.
Wow.
Ashe Soul as well. So if you put in Ashe Soul YouTube, ASHE, soul, SOUL. You'll see Afro spiritual music, and we have a whole line of albums for that. So
Ashe Soul. Ashe Soul. ASHE, not ASE, y'all. So she spelled it out.
yeah, African spiritual enlightenment. Yeah, it's it's African spiritual healing and enlightenment. Ashe.
Oh, beautiful. All right. Well, thank you again. Once again,
Thank you.
I know this will not be the last time I get to sit and speak with you. It's been a pleasure, as I said. We have taken up a lot of your time with all the list that was probably just a portion of the list of your to-do. So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It is. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I enjoyed the talk. There's things that I wanted to get out for a long time. So I'm really grateful to have the platform to be able to do so.
So does everyone want to give final words? You want to give a final word, Napa? And
I want to say just again over and over. How do I say? Give me a cultural. Take me off the big screen because I want to see her. What is a cultural way for me to say to you the deepest thanks? Like, you know, what way would I say that? In the language.
Modupwe or Adupwe, Eshega. You know, those are different words for thanks.
Adupwe.
Mm-hmm. That's one. Yes.
And what does that mean exactly? What is it? It means this deepest thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Adupwe. Thank you so much, Doctor.
So in Yoruba, if you add O to the end of anything, then that's an exclamation point, right? So Adupwe o, Modupwe o.
Oh, I like that. Okay, Adupwe o. Oh, is that why I hear a lot of different indigenous people say oh at the end of stuff, or no?
Well, there's a whole science behind O and the sound of O, but yeah, in Yoruba you will hear, you know, O is like an exclamation point, so they add O to the end about anything to give extra emphasis.
Yes, I've heard people say that when they eat something that tastes
like,
good.
You get it? You're doing this all. You're doing
this
all.
Right, exactly.
What you doing all?
Modupe o. I've heard them say when they eat something very delicious, like oh. Yeah. Okay, so let me let you go. I thank you, Modupe. Am I saying it right? Modupe o. Modupe o.
All right. Any final words from you, Chief? Or we say Modupe and just say
I've said what I had to say. Listen.
Yeah, she said a lot of final words. She's ready to go.
Gotta tell it. Oh, dang, man.
Listen,
you told it all.
If you're a woman, you do yourself a disservice by not learning about who you are, what you're made of, what you're capable of. However that shows up. You don't do anybody any favors by hiding, denying, or suppressing who you are. Take that time to empower yourself. And I would say the same thing. People of color, you need to know yourself. The ancient traditions always said, know thyself. And thyself can show up both as your physical, but it can show up as your spiritual self. And so by denial, by ignoring what is evident and what is right there before you, you hold back your greatest potential. We all came here for greatness in some form or another. And we hold ourselves back from that greatness when we deny that which we are. So as a woman, tap that energy. If you are a man, learn to honor and appreciate the women around you, and value them, because those that, if you're truly authentic with them, they're going to have your back. They're going to raise you up, they're going to lift you up. Let me tell you, there's nothing that they won't do if you support them and so on. Now, there's always going to be some people that's going to go left. That's for males and females. But for a lot of women, if you just treat them right, baby, they will go to the ends of the earth to make you, to get you where you want to go.
Oh, that's the final word. Nothing else should be said. That was the oracle said the last bit of truth. Ashe.
Ashe. Oh, everybody say Ashe. Ashe.
Okay, thank you so much, Doctor. Enjoy your day. Enjoy your week.
Ashe. Listen, Napa, say Ashe. Ashe. Oh, that brings Ashe.
Ashe. Ashe. Okay.
Just when I thought I couldn't find my way out, I search the God in me to find my way out. I know it can seem way out, but the creator flows to and through me from way out. I'm talking way out, way out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. See, if you believe in the God in you, it's a better place. Creating the force and the power to live a better. Just know that love and joy and peace is one in all of the same space. That you were chosen just like God. That's right. Only you can make the change. Shake your head at you. Shine so bright from darkness to light. Hey, hey, hey. From darkness to light. Yeah. And you'll find your way.